Welcome, crew, guys, gals, ghouls, and other worldly beings. Let's climb aboard the mothership, secure our tinfoil hats, buckle down tight, and hold on loosely as we soar over the rocky tops of the La Platas on a rocky mountain high, get sucked into the vortex of the Four Corners, and settle down snugly at mile marker 420 in colorful Colorado. I'm your ghostess with the mostest, TessaTNT, broadcasting live from the Mile High Clubhouse tonight. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you, and welcome to We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. It is an honor, a pleasure, and a privilege to have you hanging out with me on the airwaves tonight. If you want to listen in your free time, whether you're working it, or working out, feel free to listen to me on Spreaker.com under We Are Paradox Media and wherever else you listen to your broadcasts and podcasts, and you should be able to find me there. Alright, so it is Memorial Day weekend. Tomorrow is officially Memorial Day. And I don't know, usually by this time you see all kinds of pictures and videos and things of people in their gatherings, their get-togethers, hanging out, having family time, partaking of, some brews or some barbecue or lake time or something. But as badly as we're being squeezed by our government, nobody's able to afford it. And basically, we're going to work to pay for gas to go to work. So, that's pretty insane. So we're gonna take a break from reality for a bit and get into some scary stories on Storytime with me, TessaTNT. So the book we have been reading as of late is The Best of the Best Horror of the Year. And these are modern day and classic horror stories, and they've been really, really good so far. Hopefully you've been enjoying it too. We are now on page 561 of 1312. Taking her silence as further disagreement, Buchanan sighed and said, "All right, tell you what. A big Tony hotel, there's got to be all kinds of stores around it, right? Long as you don't go too far, we'll do some shopping." "Fine," Vasquez said. When Buchanan had settled back in his seat, she said, "So, you satisfied with Plowman's answers?" No, not this again. I'm just asking a question." "No, what you're asking is called a leading question, as in leading me to think that Plowman didn't really say anything to us, and we don't know anything more now than we did before our meeting." "You learned something from that?" Buchanan nodded. "You bet I did. I learned that Plowman has a hard-on for Mr. White and the size of your fucking Eiffel Tower, from which I deduce that anyone who helps him satisfy himself stands to benefit enormously." As the cab lurched forward, Buchanan said, "Am I wrong?" "No," Vasquez said. "It's... what? What is it now?" "I don't know." She looked out her window at the cars creeping along beside them. "Well, that's helpful. Forget it." For once, Buchanan chose not to pursue the argument. Beyond the car, to their right, Vasquez watched men and women walking past the windows of the ground-level businesses. Tech stores and clothing stores, and a bookstore and an office whose purpose she could not identify. Over their wrought iron balconies, the windows of apartments above showed the late afternoon sky. Its blue deeper as if hardened by a day of sun's baking. Because of him, I lost everything that was good in my life. Because of that fucker, I did time in prison. Fucking prison. Plowman's declaration sounded in her ears, insofar as the passion on his face authenticated his words, and so the purpose of their mission, his brief monologue, should have been reassuring. And yet... In the moment before he drove his fist into a prisoner's solar plexus, Plowman's features distorted and red from the last hour's interrogation would relax. The effect was startling, as if a layer of heavy makeup had melted off his skin. In the subsequent stillness of his face, Vasquez initially had read Plowman's actual emotion, a clinical detachment from pain he was preparing to inflict that was based in his utter contempt for the man standing in front of him. While his mouth would stretch with his screams to the prisoner to get up, get the fuck up, in the second after his blow had dropped the man to the concrete floor, and while his mouth and eyes would continue to express the violence his fists and boots were concentrating on the prisoner's back, his balls, his throat, there would be other moments impossible to predict. When, as he was shuffle-stepping away from a kick to the prisoner's kidney, Plowman's face would slip into that non-expression, and Vasquez would think that she had seen through to the real man. Then, the week after Plowman had brought Vasquez on board what he had named the White Detail, she'd found herself sitting through a Steven Seagal double feature. Not her first or even 10th choice for a way to pass 3 hours. But it beat lying on her bunk thinking, why are you so shocked? You knew what Plowman was up to. Everyone knows. An hour into The Patriot, the vague sensation that had been nagging at her from Seagal's first scene crystallized into recognition. That the blank look with which the actor met every ebb and flow in the drama was the same as the one that Vasquez had caught on Plowman's face. She understood, its original. For the remainder of that film and the duration of the next, Belly of the Beast, Vasquez had stared at the undersized screen in a kind of horrified fascination, unable to decide which was worse, to be serving under a man whose effects suggested a sociopath, or to be serving under a man who was playing the lead role in a private movie. How many days after that had Just Call Me Bill arrived? No more than 2. She was reasonably sure. He had come, he had told the White Detail, because their efforts with particularly recalcitrant prisoners had not gone unnoticed, and his superiors judged it would be beneficial for him to share his knowledge of enhanced interrogation techniques with them, and no doubt they had some things to teach him. His back ramrod straight, his face alight, Plowman had barked his enthusiasm for their collaboration. After that, it had been learned that learning the restraints that would cause the prisoner maximum discomfort, expose him, or occasionally her, to optimum harm. It was hoisting the prisoner off the ground first without dislocating his shoulders, then with waterboarding, yes, together with a repurposing of all manner of daily objects, from nail files to pliers to dental floss. Each case was different. Of course, you couldn't believe any of the things the prisoners said when they were turned over to you. Their protestations of innocence. But even after it appeared you'd broken them, you couldn't be sure they weren't engaging in a more subtle deception, acting as if you'd succeeded in order to preserve the truly valuable information. For this reason, it was necessary to keep the interrogation open, to continue to revisit those prisoners who swore they'd told you everything they knew. These people are not like you and me, Just Call Me Bill had said, confirming the impression that had dogged Vasquez when she'd walked patrol past women draped in white or slate burqas, men whose pakul proclaimed their loyalty to the Mujahideen. These are not a reasonable people. You cannot sit down and talk to them, Bill went on. Come to an understanding with them. They would rather fly an airplane into the building full of innocent women and men. They would rather strap a bomb to their daughter and send her to give you a hug. They get their hands on a nuke and there'll be a mushroom cloud where Manhattan used to be. What they understand is pain, enough suffering, and their tongues will loosen. Vasquez could not pin down the exact moment Mr. White had joined their group. When he had shouldered his way past Laval and Maxwell, his left hand up to stop Plowman from tilting the prisoner backwards. Just call me Bill from pouring the water onto the man's hooded face, she had thought. Who the hell? And as quickly, oh, Mr. White. He must have been with them for some time for Plowman to upright the prisoner, Bill to lower the bucket and step back. The flint knife in his right hand, its edge so fine you could feel it pressing against your bare skin, had not been unexpected, nor had what had followed. It was Mr. White who had suggested they transfer their operations to the closet, a recommendation Just Call Me Bill had been happy to embrace. Plowman at first had been non-committal. Mr. White's, call it his taking a more active hand in their interrogations, had led to him and Bill spending increased time together. Ruiz had asked the CIA man what he was doing with a man whose suit, while seemingly filthy, was never touched by any of the blood that slicked his knife, his hands. Education, Just Call Me Bill had answered. Our friend is teaching me all manner of things. As he was instructing the rest of them, albeit in more indirect fashion, Vasquez had learned that her father's stories of the Villa Grimaldi, which he had withheld from her until she was 15, when over the course of the evening after her birthday she had been first incredulous, then horrified, then filled with righteous fury on his behalf, had little bearing on her duties in the closet. Her father had been an innocent man, a poet for God's sake, picked up by the Pinochets, Caravana de la Muerte, because they were engaged in a program of terrorizing their own populace. The men and occasional women at those interrogations, she insisted, were terrorists themselves, spiritual kin to the officers who had scarred her father's arms, his chest, his back, his thighs, who had spoiled his mind with nightmares from which he still fled screaming. Decades later, they were not like you and me, and that difference authorized and legitimized whatever was required to start them talking. By the time Mahbub Ali was hauled into the closet, Vasquez had learned other things too. She had learned that it was possible to concentrate pain on a single part of the body to the point that the prisoner grew to hate that part of himself for the agony focused there. She had learned that it was preferable to work slowly, methodically, religiously, was how she thought of it, though this was no religion to which she'd ever been exposed. This was a faith rooted in the most fundamental truth Mr. White taught her, taught all of them, namely, that the flesh yearns for the knife, aches for the cut that will open it, relieve it of its quivering anticipation of harm. As junior member of the detail, she had not yet progressed to being allowed to work on the prisoners directly. But it didn't matter. While she and Buchanan sliced away at a prisoner's clothes, exposed bare skin, what she saw there, a fragility, a vulnerability, whose thick, salty taste filled her mouth, confirmed all of Mr. White's lessons, every last one. Nor was she his best student. That had been Plowman, the only one of them to whom Mr. White had entrusted his flint knife. With Just Call Me Bill, Mr. White had maintained the air of a senior colleague. With the rest of them, he acted as if they were mannequins, placeholders with Mr. Plowman. Though Mr. White was the mentor, the last practitioner of an otherwise dead art, passing his knowledge on to his chosen successor. It might have been the plot of a Steven Seagal film, and no Hollywood star could have played the eager apprentice with more enthusiasm than Plowman. While the official cause of Mahbub Ali's death was sepsis resulting from improperly tended wounds, those missing pieces of the man had been parted from him on the edge of Mr. White's stone blade, gripped in Plowman's steady hand. Six. Even with the clotted traffic, the cab drew up in front of the Concord Opera's 3 sets of polished wooden doors, with close to 5 hours to spare. While Vasquez settled with the driver, Buchanan stepped out of the cab, crossed the sidewalk, strode up the 3 stairs, and passed through the center doors. The act distracted her enough that she forgot to ask for a receipt. By the time she remembered, the cab had accepted a trio of middle-aged women, their arms crowded with shopping bags, and pulled away. She considered chasing after it before deciding that she could absorb the €10. She turned to the hotel to see the center doors open again, Buchanan standing in them next to a young man with a shaved head who was wearing navy pants and a cream tunic on whose upper left side a name tag flashed. The young man pointed across the street in front of the hotel and waved his hand back and forth, all the while talking to Buchanan, who nodded attentively. When the young man lowered his arm, Buchanan clapped him on the back, thanked him, and descended to Vasquez. She said, "What was that about?" "Shopping," Buchanan said. "Come on." The next 15 minutes consisted of them walking a route Vasquez wasn't sure she could retrace, through clouds of slow-moving tourists, stopping to admire some building or piece of public statuary, alongside briskly moving men and women whose ignoring those same sights marked them as locals as much of their chic haircuts and rapid-fire French they delivered to their cell phones, past upscale boutiques and the gated entrances to equally upscale apartments. Buchanan's route brought the two of them to a large corner building whose long windows displayed teddy bears, model planes, and dollhouses. Vasquez said, "A toy store?" "Not just a toy store," Buchanan said. "This is the toy store. Supposed to have all kinds of stuff in it." "For your son?" "Duh." Inside, a crowd of weary adults and overexcited children moved up and down the store's aisles, past a mix of toys Vasquez recognized. Playmobil, groups of army vehicles, a typical assortment of stuffed animals, and others she'd never seen before. Animal-headed figures she realized were Egyptian gods, replicas of round-faced cartoon characters she didn't know, a box of a dozen figurines arranged around a cardboard mountain. Buchanan wandered up to her as she was considering the set, the box propped on her hip. "Cool," he said, leaning forward. "What is it, like the Greek gods?" Vasquez resisted a sarcastic remark about the breadth of his knowledge. Instead, she said, "Yeah, that's Zeus and his crew at the top of the mountain. I'm not sure who those guys are climbing it." "Titans," Buchanan said. "They were monsters who came before the gods, these kind of primal forces. Zeus defeated them and imprisoned them in the underworld. I used to know all their names when I was a kid. I was really into myths and legends. Heroes, all that shit." He studied the toys, positioned up the mountainside. They were larger than the figures at its crown, over-muscled, one with an extra pair of arms, another with a snake's head, a third with a single glaring eye. Buchanan shook his head. "I can't remember any of their names now, except for this guy." He pointed out a figurine near the summit. "I'm pretty sure he's Kronos." "Kronos?" The figure was approximately that of a man, although its arms, its legs, were slightly too long, its hands and feet oversized. Its head was surrounded by a corona of gray hair that descended into a jagged beard. The toy's mouth had been sculpted with its mouth gaping, its eyes round. Idiot. Vasquez smelled spoiled meat, felt the cardboard slipping from her grasp. Whoa! Buchanan caught the box, replaced it on the shelf. Sorry, Vasquez said. Mr. White had ignored her, strolling across the round chamber to the foot of the stairs, which he had climbed quickly. I don't think that's really Sam's speed anyway. Come on, Buchanan said, moving down the aisle. When they had stopped in front of a stack of remote-controlled cars, Vasquez said, So, who was Kronos? Her voice was steady. What? Buchanan said. Oh, Kronos, he was Zeus's father. Ate all his kids because he'd heard that one of them was going to replace him. Jesus. Yeah, somehow Zeus avoided becoming dinner and overthrew the old man. Did Zeus kill him? I don't think so. I'm pretty sure Kronos wound up with the rest of the Titans underground. Underground? I thought you said they were in the underworld. Same diff, Buchanan said. That's where those guys thought the underworld was, someplace deep underground. You got to it through caves. Oh. In the end, Buchanan decided on a large wooden castle that came with a host of knights, some on horseback, some on foot, a trio of princesses, a unicorn, and a dragon. The entire set cost 260 euros, which struck Vasquez as wildly overpriced, but which Buchanan paid without a murmur of protest. The extravagance of the present, she understood, being the point. Buchanan refused the cashier's offer to gift wrap the box, and they left the store with him carrying it under his arm. Once on the sidewalk, Vasquez said, Not to be a bitch, but what are you planning to do with that? Buchanan shrugged. I'll think of something. Maybe the front desk will hold it? Vasquez said nothing. Although the sky still glowed blue, the light had begun to drain out of the spaces among the buildings, replaced by darkness that was almost granular. The air was warm, soupy. As they stopped at the corner, Vasquez said, You know, we never asked Plowman about Laval or Maxwell. Yeah, so? I wish we had. He had an answer for everything else. I wouldn't have minded hearing him explain that. There's nothing to explain, Buchanan said. We're the last ones alive. Plowman's living, so's Mr. White. Whatever, you know what I mean. Christ, even just call me Bill is dead. What the fuck's up with that? In front of them, traffic stopped. The walk signal lighted its green man. They joined the surge across the street. It's a war, Vasquez, Buchanan said. People die in them. Is that what you really believe? It is. What about your freak out before at the tower? That's exactly what it was. Me freaking out. Okay, Vasquez said after a moment. Okay, maybe Bill's death was an accident. Maybe Maxwell too. What about Laval? What about Ruiz? You telling me it's normal two guys from the same detail try to off themselves? I don't know, Buchanan shook his head. You know the Army isn't big on mental health care, and let's face it, that was some pretty fucked up shit went on in the closet. Not much of a surprise if Laval and Ruiz couldn't handle it, is it? Vasquez waited another block before asking, How do you deal with it, the closet? Buchanan took one more block after that to answer. I don't think about it. You don't? I'm not saying that the thought of what we did over there never crosses my mind, but as a rule, I focus on the here and now. What about the times the thought does cross your mind? I tell myself it was a different place with different rules. You know what I'm talking about? You had to be there. If you weren't, then shut the fuck up. Maybe what we did went over the line, but that's for us to say, not some panel of officers don't know their ass from a hole in the ground. And damn sure not some reporter never been closer to war than a goddamn showing of Platoon. Buchanan glared. You hear me? Yeah. How many times had she used the same arguments, or close enough, with her father? He had remained unconvinced. So only the criminals are fit to judge the crime, he had said. What a novel approach to justice, she said. You know what I hate, though? It isn't that people look at me funny. Oh, it's her. It isn't even the few who run up to me in the supermarket and tell me what a disgrace I am. It's like you said. They weren't there, so fuck 'em. What gets me are the ones who come up to you and tell you, good job, you fixed them Arabs, right? The crackers who wouldn't have anything to do with someone like me otherwise. Even crackers can be right sometimes, Buchanan said. Seven. Mr. White's room was on the 6th floor, at the end of a short corridor that lay around a sharp left turn. The door to the junior suite appeared unremarkable, but it was difficult to be sure, since both the bulbs in the wall sconces on either side of the corridor were out. Vasquez searched for a light switch and, when she could not find one, said, either they're blown or the switch is inside this room. Buchanan, who had been unsuccessful convincing the woman at the front desk to watch his son's present, was busy fitting it beneath one of the chairs to the right of the elevator door. Did you hear me? Vasquez asked. Yeah. Well, what? I don't like it. Our visibility's fucked. He opens the door, the lights behind him, in our faces. He turns on the hall lights, and we're blind. For like a second. That's more than enough time for Mr. White to do something. Will you listen to yourself? You saw what he could do with that knife. All right, Buchanan said. How do you propose we deal with this? Vasquez paused. You knock on the door. I'll stand a couple of feet back with my gun in my pocket. If things go pear-shaped, I'll be in a position to take him out. How come I have to knock on the door? Because he liked you better. Bullshit. He did. He treated me like I wasn't there. That was the way Mr. White was with everyone. Not you. Holding his hands up, Buchanan said, Fine. Dude creeps you out so much, it's probably better I'm the one talking to him. He checked his watch. 5 minutes till showtime, or should I say T-5 and counting, something like that. Of all the things I'm going to miss about working with you, your sense of humor is going to be at the top of the list. No sign of Plowman yet. Buchanan checked the panel next to the elevator, which showed it on the 3rd floor. He'll be here at precisely 11:10. No doubt. Well? Vasquez turned away from Buchanan. Wait. Where are you going? There's still 4 minutes on the clock. Good. It'll give our eyes time to adjust. I am so glad this is almost over, Buchanan said, but he accompanied Vasquez to the near end of the corridor to Mr. White's room. She could feel him vibrating with a surplus of smart-ass remarks, but he had enough sense to keep his mouth shut. The air was cool, floral-scented with whatever they'd used to clean the carpet. Vasquez expected the minutes to drag by, for there to be ample opportunity for her to fit the various fragments of information in her possession into something like a coherent picture. However, it seemed practically the next second after her eyes had adapted to the shadows leading up to Mr. White's door, Buchanan was moving past her. There was time for her to slide the pistol out from under her blouse and slip into the right front pocket of her slacks, and then Buchanan's knuckles were rapping the door. It opened so quickly, Vasquez almost believed Mr. White had been positioned there waiting for them. The glow that framed him was soft, orange, an adjustable light dialed down to its lowest setting, or a candle. From what she could see of him, Mr. White was the same as ever, from his unruly hair, more gray than white, to his dirty white suit. Vasquez could not tell whether his hands were empty. In her pocket, her palm was slick on the pistol's grip. At the sight of Mr. Buchanan, Mr. White's expression did not change. He stood in the doorway regarding the man and Vasquez 3 feet behind him until Buchanan cleared his throat and said, "Evening, Mr. White. Maybe you remember me from Bagram? I'm Buchanan. My associate is Vasquez. We were part of Sergeant Plowman's crew. We assisted you with your work interrogating prisoners." Mr. White continued to stare at Buchanan. Vasquez felt panic gathering in the pit of her stomach. Buchanan went on, We were hoping you would accompany us on a short walk. There are matters we'd like to discuss with you, and we've come a long way." Without speaking, Mr. White stepped into the corridor. The fear, the urge to sprint away from here as fast as her legs would take her, that had been churning in Vasquez's gut, leapt up like a geyser. Buchanan said, "Thank you. This won't take 5 minutes. 10 tops." Behind her, the floor creaked. She looked back, saw Plowman standing there, and in her confusion did not register what he was holding in his hand. Someone coughed and Buchanan collapsed. They coughed again, and it was as if a snowball packed with ice struck Vasquez's back low and to the left. All the strength left her legs. She sat down where she was, listening to her right until the wallpaper stopped her. Plowman stepped over her. The gun in his right hand was lowered. In his left he held a small box. He raised the box, pressed it, and the wall sconces erupted in deep purple-black light, by whose illumination Vasquez saw the walls, the ceiling, the carpet of the short corridor covered in symbols, drawn in a medium that shone pale white. She couldn't identify most of them. She thought she saw a scattering of Greek characters, but the rest were unfamiliar. Circles bisected by straight lines traversed by short, wavy lines. A long, gradual curve like a smile, more intersecting lines. The only figure she knew for sure was a circle whose thick circumference was broken at about the 8 o'clock point, inside which Mr. White was standing and Buchanan lying. Whatever Plowman had used to draw them made the symbols appear to float in front of the Harris surfaces on which we'd marked them, strange constellations crammed into an oversized sky. Plowman was speaking, the words he was uttering unlike any Vasquez had heard. Thick ropes of sound that started deep in his throat and spilled into the air, squirming, writhing over her eardrums. Now Mr. White's face showed emotion, surprise, mixed with what might have been dismay, even anger. Plowman halted next to the broken circle and used his right foot to roll Buchanan onto his back. Buchanan's eyes were open, unblinking, his lips parted. The exit wound in his throat shone darkly. His voice rising, Plowman completed what he was saying, gestured with both hands at the body, and retreated to Vasquez. For an interval of time that lasted much too long, the space where Mr. White and Buchanan were was full of something too big that had to double over to cram itself into the corridor. Eyes the size of dinner plates stared at Plowman, at Vasquez, with a lunacy that pressed on her like an animal scenting her with its sharp snout. Amidst a beard caked and clotted with offal, a mouthful of teeth cracked and stained black formed sounds Vasquez could not distinguish. Great pale hands large as tires roamed the floor beneath the figure. Vasquez was reminded of a blind man investigating an unfamiliar surface. When the hands found Buchanan, they scooped him up like a doll and raised him to the enormous mouth. Groaning, Vasquez tried to roll away from the side of Buchanan's head, surrounded by teeth like broken flagstones. It wasn't easy. For one thing, her right hand was still in her pants pocket, his fingers tight around the walther, her wrist and arm bent in at awkward angles. She supposed she should be grateful she hadn't shot herself. For another thing, the cold that had struck her back was gone, replaced by heat, by a sharp pain that grew sharper still as she twisted away from the snap and crunch of those teeth biting through Buchanan's skull. God. She managed to move onto her back, exhaling sharply. To her right, the sounds of Buchanan's consumption continued. Bones snapping, flesh tearing, cloth ripping. Mr. White, what had been Mr. White, or what he truly was, that vast figure was grunting with pleasure, smacking its lips together like someone starved for food, given a gourmet meal. For what it's worth, Plowman said, I wasn't completely dishonest with you. One leg to either side of hers, he squatted over her, resting his elbows on his knees. I do intend to bring Mr. White into my service, it's just the methods necessary for me to do so are a little extreme. Vasquez tried to speak. What is he? It doesn't matter, Plowman said. He's old. I mean, if I told you how old he is, you'd think. He looked at his left, to the giant sucking the gore from its fingers. Well, maybe not. He's been around for a long time, and he knows a lot of things. What we were doing at Bagram, the interrogations, they woke him. I guess that's the best way to put it, although you could say they called him forth. It took me a while to figure out everything, even after he revealed himself to me, but there's nothing like prison to give you time for reflection and research. That research says the best way to bind someone like Mr. White is, actually, it's pretty complicated. Plowman waved his pistol at the symbols shining around them. The part that will be of most immediate interest to you is the sacrifice of a man and woman who are in my command. I apologize. I intended to put the two of you down before you knew what was happening. I mean, there's no need to be cruel about this. With you, however, I'm afraid my aim was off. Don't worry, I'll finish what I started before I turn you over to Mr. White. Vasquez tilted her right hand up and squeezed the trigger of her gun. 4 pops rushed, one after the other, blowing open her pocket. Plowman leapt back, stumbled against the opposite wall. Blood bloomed across the inner thigh of his trousers, the belly of his shirt. Wiped clean by surprise, his face was blank. He swung his gun towards Vasquez, who angled her right hand down and squeezed the trigger again. The top of Plowman's shirt puffed out. His right eye burst. His arm relaxed, his pistol thumped on the floor, and a second later, he joined it. The burn of suddenly hot metal through her pocket sent Vasquez scrambling up the wall behind her before the pain lodged in her back could catch up. In the process, she yanked out the walther and pointed it at the door to the junior suite, in front of which Mr. White was standing, hands in his jacket pockets. A dark smear in front of him was all that was left of Buchanan. Jesus God. The air reeked of black powder and copper. Across from her, Plowman stared at nothing through his remaining eye. Mr. Wright regarded her with something like interest. If he moves, I'll shoot, Vasquez thought. But Mr. White did not move, not the length of time it took her to back out of the corridor and retreat to the elevator. The muzzle of the pistol centered on Mr. White, then on where Mr. White would be if he rounded the corner. Her back was a knot of fire. When she reached the elevator, she slapped the call button with her left hand while maintaining her aim with her right. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Buchanan's gift for his son, all 260 euros worth, wedged under its chair. She left it where it was. A faint glow shone from the rear end of the corridor. Plowman's black lighted symbols. Was the glow changing, obscured by an enormous form crawling towards her? When the elevator dinged behind her, she stepped into it, the gun up in front of her until the doors had closed and the elevator had commenced its descent. The back of her blouse was stuck to her skin. A trickle of blood tickled the small of her back. The interior of the elevator dimmed to the point of disappearing entirely. The Walther weighed 1,000 pounds. Her legs wobbled madly. Vasquez lowered the gun, reached her left hand out to steady herself. When it touched, not metal, but cool stone, she was not as surprised as she should have been. As her vision returned, she saw that she was in a wide circular area, the roof flat, low, the walls no more than shadowy suggestions. The space was lit by a symbol incised on the rock at her feet, a rough circle the diameter of a manhole cover, broken at about 8 o'clock, whose perimeter was shining with cold light. Behind and to her left, the scrape of bare flesh dragging over stone turned her around. This section of the curving wall opened in a black arc like the top of an enormous throat. Deep in the darkness she could detect movement, but was not yet able to distinguish it. As she raised the pistol one more time, Vasquez was not amazed to find herself here, under the ground with things whose idiot hunger eclipsed the span of the oldest human civilizations, things she had helped summon. She was astounded to have thought she'd ever left. For Fiona. The Moraine, Simon Bestwick. The mist hit us suddenly. One moment we had the peak in sight, the next the white had swallowed up the crags and was rolling down towards us. "Shit," I said. "Head back down." For once, Diane didn't argue. Trouble was, it was a very deep climb. Maybe that was why we'd read nothing about this mountain in the guidebooks. Some locals in the hotel bar the night before had told us about it. They'd warned us about the steepness, but Diane liked the idea of a challenge. All well and good, but now it meant we had to descend very slowly. One slip and you'd go down the mountainside, arse over apex. That was when I saw the faint desire line that led off, almost at right angles to the main path, running sideways and gently downwards. "There, look," I said, pointing. "What do you reckon?" Diane hesitated, glancing down the path, then up at the fast-falling mist. "Let's try it." So we did. "Look out," I said. Diane was lagging a good 4 or 5 yards behind me. "Faster." "I'm going as fast as I bloody can, Steve." I didn't rise to the bait, just turned and jogged on. The gentler slope meant we could run, but even so, we weren't fast enough. Everything went suddenly white. "Shit," Diane said. I reached out for her hand. She was just a shadow in the wall of white vapor, and she took it and came closer. The mist was cold, wet and clinging, like damp cobwebs. "What now?" Diane said. She kept her voice level, but I could tell it wasn't easy for her, and I couldn't blame her. "Don't be fooled by Lakeland's picture postcard scenery. Its high mountains and blue tarns, the boats on Lake Windermere, the gift shops and stone-built villages. You come here from the city to find the air's fresher and cleaner, and when you look up at night, you see hundreds, thousands more stars in the sky because there's no light pollution. But by the same token, fall on a slope like this and there'll be no one around and your mobile won't get a signal. And if a mist like this one comes down and swallows you up and you don't know which way to go, it doesn't take that long on a cold October day for hypothermia to set in. These fells and dells claim lives like ours each year." I took a deep breath. "I think..." "You okay?" she asked. "I'm fine." I was a little nettled she'd thought otherwise. She was the one who'd sounded in need of reassurance, but I wasn't going to start bickering now. It occurred to me at the back of my head, and I'd have denied it outright if anyone had suggested it to me, but this might be a blessing in disguise. If I could stay calm and lead us to safety, I could be a hero in her eyes. We need to get to some lower ground. Yes, I know, she said, as if I'd pointed out the stupidly obvious. Well, perhaps I had. I was just trying to clarify the situation. All right, I wanted to impress her, to look good, but I wanted to do the right thing as well, honestly. So I pointed down the trail. A few feet of it we could see where it disappeared into the mist. Best off keeping on, keep our heads, and go slowly. Yes, I worked that bit out as well. I recognized her tone of voice. It was the one she used to tack cocky students down a peg. There'd been a time when I used to slip into her lectures, even though I knew nothing then or now about geology. I just liked hearing her talk about her favored subject. I couldn't remember ever seeing her in any of my lectures. Not that she was interested in music. Maybe it had never been what I thought it was. Maybe it had never been for either of us. Not an idea I liked, but one I'd kept coming back to far too often lately, as had Diane. Hence this trip, which was looking less and less like a good idea all the time. We'd spent our honeymoon here. I suppose we'd hoped to recapture something or other, but there's no magic in places, only people and precious little of that. Less and less the older you get. And none of that was likely to get us safely out of here. Okay then, I said, come on. Diane caught the back of my coat and pulled. I wheeled to face her and swayed, off balance. Loose scree clattered down into the mist. The path had grown rockier underfoot. She caught my arm and steadied me. I yanked it free, thoroughly pissed off. What? Steve, we're still walking. I noticed. Well, actually, we're not just now, since you just grabbed me. She folded her arms. We've been walking nearly 20 minutes. I could see she was trying to stop her teeth chattering. And I don't think we're much closer to ground level. I think we might be a bit off course. I realized my teeth had started chattering too. It was hard to be sure, but I thought she might have a point. The path didn't look like it was sloping down any longer. If it had leveled off, we were still halfway up the damn mountain. Shit! I felt panic threatening, like a small hungry animal gnawing away inside my stomach, threatening to tear its way up through my body if I let it. I wouldn't, couldn't, mustn't. If we panicked, we were stuffed. At least we hadn't come completely unprepared. We had Kindle mint cake and a thermos of hot tea in our backpacks, which helped, but they could only buy a little more time. We either got off this mountain soon, or we never would. We tried our mobiles, but it was an exercise. There was no reception out here. They might as well have been bits of wood. I resisted the temptation to throw mine away. Should have stayed on the main path, Diane said. If we'd taken it slow, we'd have been okay. I didn't answer. She glanced at me and rolled her eyes. What? Steve, I wasn't having a go at you. Fine. Not everything has to be about that. I said fine. But she wouldn't leave it. All I said was that we should have stuck to the main path. I wasn't saying this was all your fault. Okay. I wasn't. If I'd seen that path, I would have probably done the same thing. It looked like it'd be us down faster. Right? I'm just saying, looking back, we should have gone the other way. Okay, all right. You've made your point. I stood up. A sheep bleated faintly. Can we just leave it now? Okay. I saw her do the eye roll again, but pretended not to. So now what? If we backtrack, think we can make it? If we can get back to the main path, we should be able to find our way back from there. If we were very lucky, perhaps our hotel was a good 2 miles from the foot of this particular peak, and chances were the mist would be at ground level too. Even off the mountain, we'd be a long way from home and dry, but it seemed the best choice on offer. If only we'd taken it sooner, we might not have heard the dog bark, but we did. We both went still. Diane brushed her dark hair back from her eyes and looked past me into the mist. I looked too, but couldn't see much. All I could see was the rocky path for a few feet ahead before it vanished into the whiteout. The sheep bleated again. A few seconds later, the dog barked. I looked at Diane, and she looked back at me. A sheep on its own meant nothing, most likely lost in a stray, like us, but a dog? A dog most likely had an owner. "Hello?" I called into the mist. "Hello! Anybody down there?" Diane called. "Hello!" a voice called back. "Thank God for that," Diane whispered. We started along the rattling path into the mist. "Hello?" called the voice. "Hello?" "Keep shouting," I called back, and it occurred to me that we were the ones who sounded like rescuers. Maybe we found another fell walker caught out in the mist like us. I hoped not. What with the dog barking as well, I was pinned my hopes on the shepherd out here rounding up the lost sheep, preferably a generously disposed one with a warm nearby cottage complete with a fire and a kettle providing hot cups of tea. Scree squeaked and rattled underfoot as we went. I realized the surface of the path had turned almost entirely into loose rock. Not only that, but it was angling sharply down after all. Diane caught my arm. "Careful." "Yeah, okay, I know." I tugged my arm free and tried to ignore the long sigh she let out behind me. The mist cleared somewhat as we reached the bottom. We could see between 25 and 30 yards ahead, which was a vast improvement, although the whiteout still completely hid everything beyond that point. The path led down into a sort of shallow ravine between our peak and its neighbor. The bases of the two steep hillsides sloped gently downwards to a floor about 10 yards wide. It was hard to be certain, as both the floor and those lower slopes were covered in a thick layer of loose stone fragments. The path we'd followed petered out more into accurately disappeared into the treacherous surface. Two big, flat-topped boulders jutted out of the screen, one about 20 yards down the ravine floor, the other about 15 yards on from that, at the mouth of a gully that gaped in the side of our peak. The mist drifted. I couldn't see any sign of a man or beast. "Hello?" I called. After a moment, there was a click and a rattle somewhere in the ravine. Rocks, pebbles sliding over one another, knocking together. "Bollocks," I said. "Easy," Diane said. "Looks like we found some low ground anyway." "That doesn't mean much. We've lost our bearings." "There's somebody around here. We heard them." "Hello!" she shouted the last. Right down my ear hole, it felt like. "Ow! Sorry." "Forget it." There was another click and rattle of stone, and the voice called out, "Hello?" again. "There," said Diane. "See?" "Yeah, okay." There was a bleat up and to our left. I looked, and sure enough, there was a sheep we'd heard, except it was more like a lamb picking its unsteady way over the rocks on the lower slopes of the neighboring peak. "Aw," said Diane. "Poor little thing." She's one of those who goes all gooey over small furry animals. Not that it stops her from eating them. I was nearly tempted to mention the rack of lamb in red wine just she'd enjoyed so much the night before. Nearly. The lamb saw us, blinked huge dark eyes, bleated plaintively again. In answer, there were more clicks and rattles and an answering bleat from further down the ravine. The lamb shifted a bit on its hooves, moving sideways, and bleated again. After a moment, I heard the rocks click again, but softly this time. It lasted longer, too. This time, almost as if something was moving slowly, as stealthily as the noisy terrain allowed. The lamb was still, looking silently up the ravine. I looked too, trying to see past where the screw faded into the mist. The rocks clicked softly, then were silent, and then a dog barked twice. The lamb tensed but was still. Click, click, click went the rocks, and the dog barked again. The lamb bleated a long silence. Diane's fingers had closed around my arm. I felt her draw breath to speak, but I turned and shushed her, fingers to her lips. She frowned. I touched my finger back to my own lips and turned to look at the lamb again. I didn't know why I'd done all that, but somehow knew I'd had to. A moment later, we were both glad of it. The click of shifting rocks got louder and faster, almost a rustle, like grass parting on something slid through it. The lamb bleated and took a few tottering steps back along the slope. Pebbles clattered down. The rock sound stopped. I peered into the mist, but I couldn't see anything. Then the dog barked again. It sounded very close now, more than close enough to see. But the ravine floor was empty. I looked back at the lamb. It was still. It cocked its head. A click of rocks and something bleated. The lamb bleated back. Rocks clattered again, deafeningly loud, and Diane made a strangled gasp that might have been my name, her hand clutching my arm painfully, and pointed with her free hand. The ravine floor was moving. Something was humped beneath the rocks, pushing them up as it went, so they clicked and rattled in its wake. It was like watching something move underwater. It raced forward, arrowing towards the lamb. The lamb let out a single terrified bleat and tried to turn away, but it never stood a chance. The humped shape under the scree hurtled towards it, loose stone rattling like dice in a shaken cup, and then rocks sprayed upwards like so much kicksand where the lamb stood. Its bleat became a horrible squealing noise. I had no idea sheep could make sounds like that. The shower of rubble fell back to earth. The lamb kept squealing. I could only see its head and front legs. The rest was buried under the rock. The front legs kicked frantically and the head jerked about, to and fro, the lips sprang back horribly from the teeth as it squealed out its pain. And then a sudden, shocking spray of blood spewed out from under the collapsing shroud of rocks like a scarlet fan. Diane clapped a hand to her mouth with a short, shocked cry. I think I might have croaked Jesus or something along those lines myself. The lamb's squeals hit a new, jarring crescendo that hurt the ears like nails on a blackboard, then choked and cut off, scree clattered and hissed down the slope and came to rest. The lamb laid still. Its fur was speckled red with blood. Its eyes already looked fixed and unblinking, glazing over. The rocks above and around it glistened. With any luck, it was beyond pain. I hoped so, because in the next moment, the lamb's forequarters were yanked violently, jerked further under the rubble, and in the same instant the scree seemed to surge over it. The heaped loose rock jerked and shifted a few times, rippled slightly, and was still. Even the stones splashed with blood were gone, rolled under the surface and out of sight. A few glistening patches remained, furthest out from where the lamb had been, but otherwise there was no sign that it had even existed. Fuck! I definitely said it this time. Oh fucking hell! There was a moment of silence. I could hear Diane drawing breath again to speak, and then there was that now familiar click and rattle as something moved under the screen. And from where the lamb had been, a voice, a low, hollow voice, called, "Hello?" Diane put her hand over her mouth. "Stay quiet," she whispered. "I know that," I whispered back, muffled by her hand. "It hunts by sound," she whispered. "Must do vibration through the rocks." There was a slight low hump where the lamb had been killed. You had to look hard to see it and know what it was you were trying to spot. A soft clicking sound came from it, rock on rock. "It's under the rocks," she whispered. "I can see that. So if we can get back up onto solid ground, we should be okay." "Should." She gave me an irritated look. "Got any better ideas?" "Okay, so we head back." "Hello?" called the voice again. "Yes," whispered Diane, and very, very slowly and carefully and quietly. I nodded. The rocks clicked and shifted softly. Diane raised one foot, moved it up slope, set it slowly, gently down again. Then the other foot. She turned and looked at me, then reached out and took my hand. Or I took hers, as you preferred. I followed her up the slope. We climbed in as near silence as we could manage, up towards the ravine's entrance, towards the solidity of the footpath. Rocks slid and clicked underfoot, as if in answer. The bloodied rocks where the lamb had died clicked too, knocking gently against one another as something shifted under them. "Hello?" I heard again as we climbed, and then again. "Hello?" "Keep going," Diane whispered. The rocks clicked again with a loud rattle. A stone bounced down to the ravine floor. "John!" This time it was a woman's voice, Scottish by the accent. "John?" "Fucking hell," I muttered, louder than I meant to and louder than I should have, because the voice sounded again. "John? John?" Diane gripped my hand so tight I almost cried out. For a moment I wondered if that was the idea, make me cry out, then let go and run, leave the unwanted partner as food for the thing beneath the rocks while she made her getaway. Kill two birds with one stone, but it wasn't, of course. "Shona?" This time the voice was a man's, likewise Scottish accented. "Shona, where are ye?" Neither of us answered. A cold wind blew. I clenched my teeth as they started to chatter again. I heard the wind whistle and moan. Shrubs flapped and fluttered in the sudden gale, and the surrounding terrain became a little clearer, though not much. Then the wind dropped again, and a soft, cold whiteness began to drown the dimly glimpsed outlines of trees and higher ground again. Stones clicked, a sheep's bleat sounded, then a cow lowed. Diane took my hand. "Come on," she said. "Let's go." The dog barked 2, 3 times as we went, sharp and sudden, startling me a little, making me sway briefly for balance. I looked at Diane, smiled a little, and let out a long breath. We were about 9 feet from the top when a deafening roar split the silence apart. I don't know what the hell it was, what kind of animal sound, but even Diane cried out and I stumbled, and sending a mini landslide slithering back down the slope. The broken slate heaved and rattled and then surged as something flew across under through the ravine floor towards us. "Run!" I heard Diane yell, and I tried. We both did, but the shape was arrowing past us. We saw that at the last moment it was hurtling past us to the edge of the scree, the point where it gave way to the path. Diane was already starting back down, pushing me behind her, when the ground erupted into a shower of stone shrapnel. I thought I glimpsed something, only for the briefest of moments, moving in the hail of broken stone, but when it fell back into place, there was no sign of anything except, if you looked, a low-humped shape. Diane shot past me, still gripping my hand, pelting along the ravine. Behind us, I heard the stones rattle as the thing gave chase. Diane veered towards the nearest of the boulders. It was roughly the size of a small car, and looked like pretty solid ground. "Come on!" Diane leapt, pretty damned agile for a woman in her late 30s who didn't lead a particularly active life, onto the boulder, and reached back for me. "Quick!" The shape was hurtling towards us, slowing as it neared us. Its bow wave of loose stones thickened, widened. It was gathering speed. I could see what was coming. I grabbed Diane and pushed her down flat on the boulder. She didn't fight, so I'm guessing she'd reached the same conclusions as me. There was a muffled thud and the boulder shook. For a moment I thought we'd both be pitched onto the scree around it. But the boulder held, too deeply rooted to be torn loose. Rocks rained and pattered down on us. I tucked my head in. I realized I was clinging on to Diane and that she was doing the same to me. I opened my eyes and looked at her. She looked back. Neither of us said anything. Behind us, there were clicks and rattles. I turned slowly, sliding off Diane. We both sat up and watched. There was a sort of crater in the layer of loose rocks beside the boulder, where the thing had hit. The scree at the bottom was heaving, shifting, rippling. The crater walls trembled and slid. After a moment, the whole lot collapsed on itself. The uneven surface rippled and heaved some more, finally stopped when it looked as it had before, undisturbed, except, of course, for the low humped shape beneath it. Click went the stones as it shifted in its tracks, taking stock. Click, click, as it moved and began inching its way around the boulder. John? Shona? Hello? All emerged from the shifting rocks, each of those different voices, then the bleat, then the roar. I swear I felt the wind of it buffet me. Christ, I said. The rocks clicked softly as the humped shape began moving, circling slowly round the boulder. Christ, my own voice answered me. Then another voice called, a child's, Mummy? Click, click, click. Shona! Click. Oh, for God's sake, Marjorie, came a rich, fruity voice, which sounded decidedly pre-Second World War, if not the first. For God's sake. Click, then silence. The wind keened down the defile. Fronds of mist drifted coldly along. Click, a high, thin female voice, clear and sweet, began singing. The ash grove, very slowly, almost like a dirge. Down yonder green valley where streamlets meander. Diane clutched my wrist tightly. Click, and the song stopped, as if a switch had been thrown. Click, click. And then there was a slow rustling and clicking as the shape began to move away from the boulder, moving further and further back. Diane gripped me tighter. The mist was thickening and the shape went slowly so that it was soon no longer possible to be sure exactly where it was. Then the last click died away and there was only the silence and the wind and the mist. Time passed. It's not gone far, Diane whispered. Just far enough that we've got some freedom of movement. It wants us to make a move. Try to run for it. It knows it can't get us here. But we can't stay here either, I pointed out in the same whisper. My teeth were already starting to chatter again, and I could see hers were too. We'll bloody freeze it. We'll freeze to death. I know. Who knows, maybe it does too. Either way, we'll have to make a break for it, and sooner rather than later. If we leave it much longer, we won't stand a chance. What the hell do you think it is? I asked. She scowled at me. You expect me to know? I'm a geologist, not a biologist. Don't suppose you've got a number for a good one on your mobile? She stopped and stared at me. We're a pair of fucking idiots, she said, and dug around in the pocket of her jeans. Out came her mobile. Never even thought of it. There's no signal. There wasn't before. It's worth a try. Hope flared briefly, but not for long. It was the same story as before. Okay, I said. So we can't phone a friend. Let's think about this then. What do we know about it? It lives under the rocks, Diane said. Moves under them. Likes to stay under them too, I said. It was right up against us before, that far from us. It could have attacked us easily just by coming up out from under, but it didn't. It'd rather play it safe and do the whole waiting game thing. So maybe it's weak if we can get it out of the rocks vulnerable. Diane shook off her glasses, rubbed her large eyes. Maybe it's blind. It seems to hunt by sound, vibration. A mimic? That's something else. It's a mimic, like a parrot. Only faster, she said. It mimicked you straight away after hearing you once. Got a good memory for voices, too, I whispered back. Some of those voices. Yes, I think so, too, in that roar it made. How long's it been since there was anything roaming wild in this country could make a noise like that? Maybe a bear, I offered, or one of the big saber-toothed cats. Diane looked down at the screen. Glacial till, she said. What? Sorry, the stones here, it's what's called glacial till, earth that's been compressed into rock by the pressure of the glaciers coming through here. She looked up and down the ravine. So? The look she gave me was equal parts hurt and anger. So? Nothing much, I suppose. Wind blew. I'm sorry, she shrugged. It's okay. No, really. She gave me a smile, at least that time, then frowned, looked up at the way we'd come in. Had it only been in the last hour? Look at that. You can see it now. See what? She pointed. This is a moraine. A what? Moraine is the debris, till and crushed rock a glacier leaves behind when it melts. All this would have been crushed up against the mountainsides for God knows how long. I remember Diane telling me about the last ice age, how there'd have been 2 miles of ice above the cities we'd grown up in. How far down would all this have been, and could anything have lived in it? I was willing to bet any of our colleagues in the biology department would have snorted at the idea, but even so, life is very tenacious, isn't it? It can cling on in places you'd never expect it to. Maybe some creatures had survived down here in the Ice Age, crawling and slithering between the gaps in the crushed rocks. And in every food chain, something's at the top. Something that hunted blindly by vibration and lured by imagination. Something that had survived the glaciers melting, even prospered from it, growing bigger and fatter on bigger, fatter prey. The lost lamb had saved us by catching its attention. Without that, we'd have had no warning and would have followed that voice, no doubt belonging to some other long-dead victim, into the heart of the killing ground. Click, 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 went the rocks in the distance, as the creature shifted and then grew still. And Diane leant close to me and breathed in my ear. We are going to have to make a move. To our left was the way we'd come, the scree-thick path, sloping up before bending with the moraine. 20 yards, it might as well have been 10 miles. The base of the peak was at our backs. It wasn't tree, not quite, but it may as well have been. The only handholds were the occasional rock or root. Even if the fall didn't kill you, you'd be too stunned or injured to stand a chance. The base of the opposite peak, even if we could have got past the creature, was no better. To our right, the main body of the ravine led on, thick with rubble, before vanishing into the mist. Running along that would be nothing short of suicide, but there was still the gully we'd seen before. From what I could see, the floor of it was thickly littered with rubble, but it definitely angled upwards, hopefully towards higher ground of solid earth and grass, where the thing from the moraine couldn't follow. Better still, there was that second boulder at the gully mouth, as big and solidly rooted, looking as this one, if not bigger. If we could make it that far, and we might, with a little luck, we had a chance to get out through the gully. I looked at the boulder and back at Diane. She was still studying it. "What do you reckon?" I breathed. "Click, click, click," came softly, faintly, gently in answer. Diane glanced sideways. "The bastard thing's fast," she whispered back. "It'll be a close thing." "We could distract it," I suggested. "Make a noise to draw it off." "Like what?" I nodded at the rocks at the base of the boulder. "Pick a spot and lob a few of them at it. Hopefully it'll think it's another square meal." She looked dubious. "Suppose it's better than nothing." "If you've got a better idea." She looked hurt rather than annoyed. "Hey." "I'm sorry." I was too. I touched her arm. "We've just got to make that boulder." "And what then?" "We'll think of something. We always do." She forced a smile. Reaching down to pick up the bits of rubble and rock wasn't pleasant, mainly because the thing had gone completely silent and there was no knowing how close it might be now. Every time my hands touched the rocks, I was convinced they'd explode in my face before something grabbed and yanked me under them. But the most that happened was that once nearby, the rocks clicked softly and we both went still, waiting for several minutes before reaching down again after a suitable pause. At last we were ready with a half a dozen good-sized rocks apiece. "Where do we throw them?" Dan whispered. I pointed to the footpath. "We'd be heading, after all, in the opposite direction." She nodded. "Ready?" Another nod. I threw the first rock. We threw them all, fast within a few seconds, and they cracked and rattled on the slate. The slate nearby rattled and hissed as something moved. "Go," Diane said. We jumped off the boulder and ran for the gully mouth. Diane had often commented on my being out of condition, so I was quite pleased that I managed to outpace her. I overtook easily and was soon a good way ahead. The boulder was 2 more strides away, 3 at most, and then the 2 sounds came together. A dismayed cry from Diane, and then that hiss and click and rattle of displaced scree, rising to a rushing roar as a bow wave of broken rocks rose up behind Diane and bore down on her. I screamed at her to run, covering the rest of the distance at the boulder and leaping onto it, turning, holding my hands out to her, as if that was going to help. But what else could I have done? Running back to her wouldn't have speeded her up, and... oh, yes. I could have tried to draw it off, risked my own life, even sacrificed it to save hers. Yes, I could have done that. Thanks for reminding me. It got to her as I turned. There was an explosion of rubble, the spray of it, and she screamed. I threw up my hands to protect my face. A piece of rock glanced off my forehead, and I stumbled, swayed, losing balance, but thank God I hadn't ditched my backpack. The weight dragged me back, and I fell across the boulder. Rubble rained and scattered about us. As I stared at Diane, she'd fallen face down on the ground. Arms outstretched, her pale hands splayed out on the earth. We're about 3 feet from the boulder. I reached out a hand to her, leaning forward as far as I dared. I opened my mouth to speak her name. And then she lifted her head and looked up. Her glasses were askew on her pale face, and one lens was cracked. In another moment, I might have jumped off the boulder and gone to her, but then she screamed and blood sprayed from the ground where her feet were covered by a sheet of rubble. Her back arced, a fingernail split as she clawed at the ground. Red bubbled up through the stones like a spring. Diane was weeping with pain. She tried to twist round to see what was being done to her, but jerked, shuddered, and cried out before she could complete it. She twisted back to face me, lips trembling, still crying. I leant forward, hands outstretched, but couldn't reach. Then I remembered the backpack and struggled out of it, loosening the straps to give the maximum possible slack, gripping one and holding the backpack as far out as I could, so that the other dangling closer to her. "Grab it," I whispered. "I'll pull you in." She shook her head hard. "No," she managed at last. "Don't you get it?" What? We weren't whispering anymore. Didn't seem much point. Besides, her voice was ragged with pain. It wants you to try, don't you see? Otherwise, it would have dragged me straight under by now. I stared at her. Steve, it's using me as bait. Her face tightened. She bit her lips and fresh tears leaked down her pale cheeks. Her green eyes squeezed shut. When they opened again, they were red and bloodshot. Oh God, what's it done to my legs? My feet? I don't know. I lied. That's it, don't you see? She was breathing deeply now, trying to get the agony under control. I've had it. Won't get 5, and even if it did let me go to chase after you, can't get at you up there, so stay put. But, dimly I realized I was crying too. This was my wife. My wife, for Christ's sake. Diane forced a smile. Just stay put or try. Make a getaway. I'm not leaving you. Yes, you are. It'll go after you. Might be able to drag myself there. She nodded at the boulder. You could go get help. Help me. Might stand a chance. I looked at the blood still bubbling up from the stones. She must have seen the expression on my face. Like that? Is it? I looked away. I can try. My view of the gully was still constricted by my position. I could see the floor of it sloping up, but not how far it ultimately went. If nothing else, I could draw it away from her, give her a chance to get to the boulder. And what then, if I couldn't find a way out of the gully? If there wasn't even a boulder to climb to safety on, I'd be dead, and the best Diane could hope for was to bleed to death. But I owed her a chance of survival at least. I put the backpack down, looked into her eyes. As soon as it moves off, start crawling. Shout me when you're here. I'll keep making a racket. Try and keep it occupied. Be careful. You too. I smiled at her and refused to look at her feet. We met at university. Did I tell you? Did I mention that? A drunken discussion about politics in the student union bar. More of an argument, really. We'd been on different sides, but ended up falling for each other. That pretty much summed up our marriage, I suppose. Love you, I managed to say at last. She gave a tight, buckled smile. You too, she said back. That was never something either of us had said easily. Should have known it'd take something like this. Okay then, I muttered. Bye. I took a deep breath, then jumped off the boulder and started to run. I didn't look back, even when Diane let out a cry, because I could hear the rattle and rush of slate behind me as I pelted into the gully and knew the thing had let her go. Let her go so that it could come after me. The ground's upward slope petered out quite quickly, and the walls all around were a good 10 feet high, sheer and devoid of handholds, except for at the very back of it. There was an old stream channel. Only the thinnest trickle of water made it out now, but I'm guessing it had been stronger once, because a mix of earth and pebbles, lightly grown over, formed a slope leading up to the ground above. A couple of gnarled trees sprouted nearby, and I could see their roots breaking free of the earth, thick and twisted, easy to climb with. All I had to do was reach them. But then I noticed something else, something that made me laugh wildly. Only a few yards from where I was now, the surface of the ground changed from a plain of rubble to bare rock. Here and there, earth had accumulated and sprouted grass, but what mattered was that there was no rubble for the creature to move under. I chanced one look behind me. No more than that. It was hurtling towards me, the huge bow wave of rock. I ran faster, managed the last few steps, and then dived and rolled across blessed solid ground. Rubble sprayed at me from the edge of the rubble, and again I caught the briefest glimpse of something moving in there. I couldn't put any kind of name to it if I tried, and I don't think I want to. The rubble heaved and settled, the stones clicked. I got up and started backing away, just in case. Click, click, click. I Had anything ever got away from it before? I couldn't imagine anything human doing so, or men would have come back here with weapons to find and kill it, or perhaps that survivor hadn't been believed. Click, 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 click. A sheep bleated. Click. A dog barked. Click. A wolf howled. Click. A cow lowed. Click. A bear roared. Click. John? Click. Shona, where are ye? Click. Mummy? Click. Oh, for God's sake, Marjorie, for God's sake. Click. Down yonder green valley where streamlets meander. Click. Christ, my voice. Christ. Click. Steve, get help. Help me. Click. Steve, help me. I turned and began to run, started climbing. I looked back. When I heard stones rattling, I looked back and saw something. A wide shape moving under the stones and heading away back towards the mouth of the gully. Diane? I shouted. Diane! There was no answer. I've been walking now, according to my wristwatch, for a good half hour. My teeth are chattering and I'm tired, and all I can see around me is the mist. Still no signal on my mobile. They can trace our position from a mobile call these days. That would be helpful. I've tried to walk in a straight line so that if I find help I can just point back the way I came, but I doubt I've kept to one. I tell myself that she must have passed out from the effort and pain of dragging herself onto the boulder. I tell myself that the cold must have slowed her circulation down to the point where she might still be alive. I do not think of how much blood I saw bubbling out from under the stones. I do not think of hypothermia, not for her. I'm still going, so she still must have a chance there too, surely. I keep walking. I'll keep walking for as long as I can believe Diane might still be alive. After that, I won't be able to go on because it won't matter anymore. I'm crawling now. We came out here to see if we still worked, the two of us, under all the clutter and the mess, and it looks like we still did. There's that cold comfort, at least. At the Writing School by Cody Goodfellow. 1. Come quick, she said in a voice so leaden each word took a year off my life. Bring the black bag. There's been an accident. The cold woke me up, and I knocked over a water bottle getting out of bed. For an instant, the glimmer of my ex-husband's terrified countenance flashed through my murky thoughts. Shaking his horrible visage off, I realized that the cabin was freezing. Then I began to worry about what really mattered, getting to Madame fast enough. I had only been in town 6 months, struggling to make a name for myself when Madame Diosquilos had called the time, which was the first time. I had already heard that she owned a large barn and 24 horses, but that she was a rather difficult client and stingy. She and her charges did all the routine medical work, and she'd had the same blacksmith since opening the academy. I found her to be demanding but fair. I kept her secrets, and she, so far, kept mine. I was all packed before I woke Tonio. He had only been with me for a few months, and I was afraid of spooking him, but he got dressed and helped me load the truck, then climbed in with a sketch pad and a book of colored pencils. I told him only that we were going to see a sick animal. A ward of the state for almost all his 10 years, he was well trained to follow directions. I knew Madame Diosquilos would become irate about the boy. No men were allowed on the estate after dark, unless sent for, but I was more worried about him waking up alone in an empty house. Anyway, it was time, if this was what I thought it was, for Madame to see. I brought my special kit bag, though I doubted if it would do any good. She would have the only sure cure loaded and propped beside the stable door, like always. We didn't pass any cars going through town to the coast road. My windshield was frosted over, and it was freakishly cold for Big Sur, even in winter. The lights were out at the yogic retreat at the end of Main Street, and the few street lamps lit only coronas of sleet. But I had to keep myself from driving too fast. The road spilled out of the trees and clove to the sheer cliffs over the Pacific. Surfing the uneasy edge of the land for 60 unlit white-knuckle miles. The state hadn't replaced the guardrail where the last car had gone over, only a few weeks before. Nearly 10 years prior, I'd learned, Greta Spivak, a local vet who'd worked for Madame Dioskilos before me, drove over the edge during a winter storm. They found no body in the truck, and it was blithely assumed that the sharks got her before she could drown. Tonio fell asleep, rocked by the swaying serpentine highway. I turned the radio on as loud as I dared to keep myself from thinking. Only 4 other emergencies had called me up to Madame Dioskilos' house after dark in the whole 7 years that I had worked for her. The first time she had explained our situation. She had found me out, and we both understood that her leverage meant that I could be trusted with what I must do. There are many veterinarians between Big Sur and Monterey who would have done the work and had no qualms about it. Bitter, middle-aged divorcees, born-again pagans, misanthropic bull dykes, but they are all too clean for her. Just as I needed her, she needed someone like me. The entrance to her estate was nestled in one of the box canyons that the highway wanders into, seeking an escape from the sea, only to veer away in a panicky hairpin turn. The gate itself is formidable, shrouded in veils of coastal live oak and laurels, wrought iron barbs 10 feet high, a press conference's worth of cameras fixed on the road. I always paused to look at the sculpture in the grove just outside the gate. Most thought it was a modern piece, the angular severity, shaming the mathematical fascism of the Italian futurists, but the sculpture was symptomatic, with Madame Dioskilos herself so easy to completely misread. Like her, it came from the Cyclades Islands, and was a forgotten relic before Athens had erected its first temple. It depicted a lithe blade of a human figure, somehow undeniably a girl, riding the back of a rampant, chimerical beast. Madame told the curious was a centaur, though its hindquarters seemed to be broken off and lost to posterity. It might have been Nessus's abduction of Alcmene, the bride of Hercules, but when you got to know Madame Dioskilos, you figured it out. The centaur was not broken, and it wasn't a centaur, and the myth depicted was not in any storybooks. The gates were swinging open as I turned up the drive, bricking cagily on the slippery driveway, one arm out to brace Tonio. They let me adopt him with no problems, glad to empty a bed at the struggling group home in Oakland where we met. Though they did a thorough background check, the authorities never found any red flags in the short, happy life of Ruth Wyeth. Of course they hadn't dug half as diligently as she had. Two. Artemisia Dioskilos, Madame's mother, was a fiery vamp and celebrated equestrian from a tiny Greek island. She married an ancient Italian count who died in World War I, then fled to California with his wealth and title. The Countess ran a riding school in the Hollywood Hills until 1926, when she retreated from society under a shameful cloud and purchased an estate on the central coast of California to raise her only daughter, Celia. No inquiry was ever made into the identity of the child's father. Alone on the estate with her mother and servants, the young Celia Dioskilos must have pined for friends as a child. When her mother died in 1960, she went back to the old country to live for 3 years. When she returned, Skila opened a new private school. For 40 years now, she'd run the Delos Academy, and if there were occasional problems with the state, no one had ever raised an eyebrow. She boarded no more than 12 children at a time, taught them to read, do sums, and shoot arrows at deer from the back of a horse. She could have charged $10,000 a semester to the Snots in Carmel and gotten it, but she didn't need money, and she avoided publicity like the plague. She selected abandoned and orphaned girls from the Bay Area cities, and she didn't discriminate by race, so they tried to stuff kids into the trunk of her Rolls Royce as she drove away. They were all smart, strong little girls. The rest she could make over. A certified teacher educated the girls who had only each other for society. Most stayed through puberty and came out fearless, aglow with eerie confidence and destined for bright futures. The whole West Coast was peppered with Madame's prodigies, a sorority that had helped girls obtain scholarships and entry into Ivy League schools. Interviews with Fortune 500 companies and even temporary financial assistance once they graduated university. Counted among the Delos alumni were many powerful women, one of San Francisco's most successful defense attorneys, a sitting assemblywoman in Sacramento, even a U.S. junior senator. They also held keep the secret. Madame Desquios wanted no awards, no media attention. Most people in town didn't even know about the riding school. 3. I rolled up the drive and past the whitewashed Cretan villa with its showcase equestrian stables, over the ridge at the top of the canyon and around the front of the austere pine log hunting lodge. The garage was locked down, motion detector lights and security cameras triggered each other. Seeing no lights on, I drove on down into a stand of oaks where I knew she would be, in the other stables. I parked under the awning and told Tonio to stay in the truck. I gave him my cell phone and told him what to do if it rang. Then got out and stumbled through the dark to the golden glow of a lantern over the stable door. Only the oldest girls at the school came anywhere near here, the ones who had been initiated into what Madame called the mysteries. I didn't pretend to know what she meant, but I sensed what lay at the root of her fanaticism. I pushed open the stable door and stepped into Mediterranean heat and the awesome stink of Madame Desquios' steeds. "Miss Wyatt?" Her voice, from the tack room. I responded and went to the little door beside the corridor that led to the indoor arena. If there'd been an accident at this hour, it would have happened there. I didn't see the shotgun anywhere about and was both more and less uneasy as I ducked into the tack room. Madame sat in a rocking chair in a corner of the track room beside a mountain of dusty blankets. She was wiry and much stronger than I was for her age and size. Her hands clutched each other, shaking. "What happened?" "An accident," Madame Desquios murmured. "An ill omen." "Which one was it?" I was a fool to trust her with him. I thought in her I saw something. Actaeon. Her wounded voice faltered, and I felt my own heart race with distress. Her prized stallion. "Well, where is he? What can I do for him here?" "He is unharmed. I will deal with him later, myself, but I need your help with another matter. It is not for him that I call you." She leaned forward as if to get up again and pulled back the top blanket from the pile. A girl lay curled up on her side with her knees tight against her chest and bound up by her arms. She wore a few rags of the short white chittens that the girls always wore when riding. Blood smeared the inside of her legs down to her knees, soaking the blanket under her. "Oh, God! What do you want me to do?" I felt sick to my stomach. with the tragedy of it. I say tragedy because it was so inevitable. Clearly, she'd already been sedated, or was in shock, her eyes half lidded, her tongue protruding from her teeth. She was 12, maybe 13, with caramel skin and straight, shiny black hair in a boyish bob. Her elbows and knees were torn and blotted with sawdust. Her lips split, and bruises bloomed on her neck and shoulders. The horrible wound between her legs still bled. She was ready for an ambulance. One had to look very long and hard to see her breathe. I wasn't breathing at all. He did this? Trista is a vigorous rider, a natural hunter. When her first bloodletting came, she embraced the mysteries and hunted the hunter. She rode Minos like a high priestess, but she trained too hard. Such girls, one cannot always see it. They are wanton. Where is he now? I demanded. It was only for the girl's sake that I didn't shout. Where's the shotgun? The other ones had never done anything like this, but the others were all geldings. They'd only wounded each other or been lamed in accidents, although they were bred for the steep terrain and rocky cliffs of Greece. There were other dangers here. One was bitten by a rattlesnake, another snarled in razor wire. Madame always went back to Greece and got more, though now she got them into the country always puzzled me. The lights were dim in the arena, but I heard him snorting and pawing the muddy turf. I couldn't find the shotgun, but I wasn't to be denied. I found a shovel. In the Greek myths, Actaeon was a hunter who stumbled on Diana bathing in a sacred pool. For stealing a glance at her divine nakedness, the hunter was transformed into a stag and ripped to shreds by his own dogs. I went into the dark faster than I could see through it, with the shovel cocked over my shoulder. I followed the wall of the big round arena, wary of the hidden obstacles the girls jumped to train for the hunt. I heard him before I saw him, chains rattling as he came charging out of the shadows, but it gave me no advantage. The chains ran back to stout rings in the wall, giving him more than enough slack to get me. I swung the shovel as hard as I could, but he ducked under it and drove his head and massive shoulder into my gut. I felt hard on my back and lost the shovel. I curled into a sobbing ball with no breath to do anything else. His eyes reflected the moon glow from the skylight as he looked me over, trying to decide what he wanted most. He was still saddled. His bridle was twisted around so it hung from his muzzle, which he'd already half chewed through. His silver fighting spurs glittered in the moonlight. A whip cracked between us, the tip raking his face, so he leapt back and barked submissive. "It's not his fault," she cried. "Trista rode him too hard. Her sisters say there is carnality in her, but I pay no heed. They're jealous naturally. She rides him too hard on the course, driving with her hips, but with ulterior motivations. She pleasures herself upon the saddle. Such girls often break their maidenhood on the pommel, and this she did. Nature ran away with them both. It is not his fault, the blood." "Well, what the fuck did you expect, madame?" She looked as if she'd never been yelled at before, so I resolved to make it memorable for her. "He's a man, for God's sake." "No," she shouted and crossed her arms in negation between us. "Not a man, a beast." "All men are beasts," I said, and most women, I thought. "Let me tell you," she growled and approached Actaeon. He shifted from foot to foot and studied us both. They'd always been sedated or sequestered when I came before. I had no problem killing them. I did not see their faces in my dreams. Thanks to them, I hardly ever dreamed about my husband. Madame Dioskios coiled the whip taut around one gloved fist as she spoke. "When my ancestors came to the island of Dioskios 3,000 years ago, they were set upon by beasts in the shape of men, who killed and ate our men and raped our women. The drunken gods often rutted with animals and sired monsters such as these, here and there in the dark corners of the earth. The goddess Diana heard our prayers and appeared to the girls of the tribe, who alone could tame them, so long as they remained chaste, and they did tame them, Mrs. Slabbert, but they have ever been beasts. Throwing my real name in my face, Madame untangled Actaeon's reins and tugged his huge anvil of a head down to the dirt. He bowed with a snort, one sturdy knee extended out, and Madame stepped up on it, swung her leg over the saddle, and sat erect with her boots in the stirrups. At a clipped shout from Madame, Actaeon rose to his full height. His hooded eyes leered at me over his bloody muzzle. She could make a good argument for her case without words, though he stood on 2 legs and had hands. He had no thumbs, whether from selective breeding or postnatal surgery. I didn't care to guess. His barreled torso was rudely muscled, covered in sleek black hair like goats, and his shoulders were broad enough to carry a full-grown woman up a mountain on the elaborate saddle perched upon his slightly hunched back. That those mighty shoulders produced such puny, almost flipper-like arms screamed selective breeding over hundreds of centuries from proto-human stock, perhaps even the last Neanderthals, a Greek myth that Bullfinch left out. For better or worse, though Madame's ancestors might have been the grain of sand that grew so many pearls. The Amazons who made impotent slaves of their men, circa who made pigs and asses of Odysseus's crew, satyrs and centaurs. This one you will not kill. From the saddle, Madame reclaimed her regal bearing, the whip uncoiled now, for me. It is his nature. How many girls will you let him rape? This has never happened before. It will never happen again. The girls will be trained. I raised the shovel. Get down off him, Madame. When you kill them, Phyllis, do you imagine that they are your husband? That stopped me cold, but I didn't take the bait. I could see where she was leading this, and I brought it back. What's to become of the girl? When's the ambulance due? Actaeon took a few hopping steps, stalking in a lazy, tightening spiral around me. He balanced himself and Madame effortlessly on the balls of his feet. Splayed talon-tipped toes like a mountain lion, the heels augmented with curved bronze stiletto spurs, like a gamecock, and peeking out of the blood-matted black thicket between his powerful legs, the weapon. He couldn't have gotten his chastity belt off by himself. Nature ran away with them both. His monstrous appendage bobbed and lengthened visibly as he circled, slavering and twitching to have done with Madame's games. She dug her heels into his scarred flanks and tracked my eyes with hers. Stroking the back of his head, she ran away from us, went back to the city where, small surprise, she was attacked. We will be heartbroken, but resolute. She brought this upon herself. The heart of it is the truth. So you want me? It was beneath words. But when she talks, you are not to hurry, Mrs. Slabbert. Actaeon gave a gibbering gurgle from deep in his throat and strained with his stunted forelegs to stroke his cock, still crusted with Trista's blood. I tried to stare him down. Menopause makes you think you can pull shit like that. He shook his head, his muzzle slipped off. He grinned at me. Each mellow tooth was the size of a man's toenail, and the moray eel of his tongue lurked behind them. His breath raised welts on my skin. I still had the shovel. Hey, cut the shit out. I'm not going to help you kill that girl. Of course not, but you are going to get yourself out of what we are both in, no? She snapped the reins, and Actaeon reared up. His spurred feet kicked in the air, flinging sodden sweat. He bent down low, craning his neck until his head was between his knees, to sniff his crotch. Sniff my crotch. Madame dismounted to stand between us. I know that what you have done for me in the past was not wholly out of necessity. You knew how others would judge you. You are a part of the mysteries now. I stepped around her and reached out to stroke Action's bristly black mane. He twitched and unfolded warily from his rigid, dismounting stance, and an alarmingly powerful musky scent suddenly filled the arena. Madame gripped his reins in one hand and whip in the other. I scratched behind his ears and the base of his skull, where all animals like it. His jaw went slack, but his eyes never left mine. I leaned in closer, holding my breath. I knew what I'd find, but it was the least dangerous way into the subject. What do you do? Madame Dioskios demanded, jerking his head back by the reins. Nothing. I was only counting his teeth. You told me once that they have 4 more than us. Action obliged by bearing his fierce dentition. The extra bicuspids and molars were there. Along with the outsized mandible muscles and projecting palate, they were made to crack open seeds, shellfish, and bones. I wondered who had given him his floor-gold fillings. Like jackals, Madame said, and led Action away from me. She didn't know where this was going, and so it had to stop. Eskimos and American Indians have different dentition from Europeans. How much less human does that make them? I should have gone to the girl. Madame trusted me to let her die. It would have been so easy to save her and deliver her to the hospital. And we both get what we deserved, but first I had to show her. She flicked her whip at me by way of dismissal and led Action to the grooming stalls. I went to look at the girl. Her breathing was shallow, pulse shocking, and she still bled. If I dumped her out in the cold somewhere up the coast, like Madame ordered me to, she'd never revive. Madame would never dirty her patrician mind with an explicit request that I help her along, but when you work for someone long enough, you learn to read them. Cruel, surely, but in Madame's world, nature was a serial rapist, and unfit children were left out for the wolves. I tried not to think about it. I had treated Madame Dioskios' livestock, her men, for 7 years, and put down 4 of them, and I knew that what I did wasn't the worst of it. I knew about the high hunt at the vernal and autumnal equinoxes, and what they hunted. Drifters, illegal aliens, men nobody missed. Anybody with a gun would have killed all of her creatures because they were less than human. But I had let her use me to kill only the useless ones because they were men. Madame's school, the hunt, and the mysteries made these cast-off girls into women the rest of the world respected, envied. It empowered them to reach for undreamed-of heights and liberated them from ever becoming a man's creature. And I guess I was one of them from the day I killed my husband. We had a thriving vet practice in Maryland, clients in Chevy Chase, contracts with stables that bred Triple Crown contenders. For such a smart man, Dan Slavert got very, very stupid around money. He did things for it, just to get close to it, to dream of belonging to it. They let him think he could someday be one of them, so he started doping horses for them. Whatever they promised him was enough that, eventually, he killed a champion thoroughbred for them. Insurance paid off, and Dan must have got a healthy cut in the hidden account. He started getting consultant work across the country from rich friends who could afford to fly in a witch doctor to see to their sick investments. He killed 3 more before I found out, but I didn't do anything. I found out he was fucking call girls the clients threw his way, but I said nothing. Then I found out what they'd promised him. In return for becoming their equine hitman, they were going to make him a rich widower. I confronted him with the insurance policies and the rest of it, and he took it like a man. He tried to kill me himself. We fought. I won. I left the country, laying a convincing trail to nowhere, then quietly snuck back in under an assuming name I'd bought with Dan's blood money. I knew my new identity wasn't airtight when somebody deposited $50,000 into Ruth Wyeth's new checking account. I suppose in the end I did the horsey set a favor. In Big Sur, I was just another dumpy misfit who had sublimated her miserable lack of sex appeal into a gift for animal husbandry. I thought I could start over. It took Madame Diosquios to show me how fucking mad I still was, how many times I still wanted to kill him. I packed surgical gauze into Trista's wound and wrapped her up in a blanket. I left the tack room and found Madame walking her prize stallion in his stable. I hit the speed dial on the spare cell phone in my coat pocket and went to meet her. I'm ready to take her, I said. The barn door creaked and a solemn 10-year-old black girl in a spotless white tracksuit slipped in through the crack. A big flashlight in one hand, my phone ringing in the other. Looking back at someone outside, she bowed and whispered, "Madame, there's a boy." Madame Diosquios hissed in outrage and reached for the bullwhip coiled on the wall. I moved to stop her. "He's mine. He's just a little boy. I adopted him. Leave him alone." The girl swung the flashlight at me. It smashed my forearm, and the arm went limp. "A boy here?" Madame Diosquios spat, eyes locked imperiously on mine until I looked away. "And on this night of all nights." "I didn't know I'd be dumping a—" He was on the other side of the barn door. I begged, "Oh God, let me see him, please. You know my rules." "You must have rubbed off on me," I pleaded. "I took him in to have somebody to teach the trade. I couldn't leave him at home, could I?" "If you have taken in a boy, you have learned nothing from me." Her strong gloved fingers worried at the silver lunar clasp holding her long white hair. She never looked so old to me before. I thought it was far over what happened. It had never occurred to me she was disappointed in me. "Let him come in, please, madame. I want you to see him." The door opened wider, and Tonio crept in, hugging his pad and pencils to his chest. He looked scared to death, and I started to cry, but when I went to him, the girl brandished the flashlight. A lithe little Latina girl came in with a bow stretched and a silver-tipped hunting arrow knocked. I screamed at them to back off. Tonio cried and I hugged him. "Tonio, it's okay, honey. You scared them as bad as they scared you." I turned him around to face the old woman. "Tonio, I want you to meet Madame Sila Diosquios. She's one of the ladies whose horses I take care of. She runs a school for girls, kind of like a foster group home, but nicer. Madame, this is Tonio. Smile big for the nice lady, Tonio." Scared, Tonio yet managed a thin smile at Madame Diosquios, who barely glanced at him. "Hi," he whispered. "Show her your drawings, honey," I said, but he only hooked the pad tighter. Madame scowled and made some ancient cursing gesture with her fingers. You see, Tonio was born with severe cognitive disability, so bad that his mother surrendered him to the state. He grew up in a special group home in Oakland. I had a hard time tracking him down. There are so many children that nobody wants. I wanted you to meet him. You have defiled my house with this. They're beasts, then, and can never be more, I demanded, and Madame nodded. What is your point? She snapped. Please, Tonio, show her your drawings. I want her to see what a good artist you are. Tonio looked warily around the barn, then slowly unclinched and opened the pad. Shy, slow, autistic, whatever the ignorant might call him, he could draw horses, leapt across the pages like a storm, filling and spilling off the paper, rendered in every color in his box, and some others he'd cleverly blended by smudging them with his little fingers. So you were wrong, I said it, and you lied to me before. Madame made a gesture of water flowing off her face. You did the right thing, bringing him, Madame said. You must be made to see. She advanced Antonio until he stood between him and me. Something she took out of her belt made him scream. From somewhere in the barn came an answer. The lowing roar and crash of wood and metal froze the room. My heart leapt into my mouth. The jaundiced whites of Madame's eyes gleamed all around her violet irises. The knife flashed in her hand. Chandra, go and see to the beasts, Madame ordered. Marina, shoot her if she moves. The black girl edged around the awkward scene and stalked into the stables. The girl behind Tonio aimed the arrow at me and drew the string back. Tonio sank to the ground, took out a pencil, and began to draw. Madame hovered over Tonio, the knife behind her back, intrigued. You adopted this boy. Do not tell me lies, Phyllis Slavert. You lied to me when you said this had never happened before. Madame blinked at me. Tonio whimpered and sketched. The bowstring creaked. Look at him, Madame. I want you to count his teeth. Madame whirled on me and brought the knife up to my chin so quickly I couldn't even flinch. What is this game? My muscles locked up and I just stared at her. Epteon's done it before, hasn't he? Maybe you even let it happen. Part of the rituals or breeding experiment, and you made Greta Spivak, your old vet, dump the girl. Who is this? I know no one by this name. Madame's wounded innocence was silent, movie acting at its finest. Bullshit. She worked for you. I think it was because you both knew the girl was pregnant. You lied. The knife slashed at my face. I ducked away, but the edge flayed my scalp. A big flap of skin with hair on it came away in my hand as I cradled the wound. Sobs of pain welled up in my throat, but I gagged them back. Whether or not I could go on, it had to come out. The girl was only 12, you remember? She couldn't keep him, so they put him up for adoption, but nobody wanted him. He'd retreat and draw on everything, then have violent fits of rage. His hormones are all screwed up and no one's ever tried to reach him, let alone love him, but he's a sweet, sensitive little boy. Madame looked from Antonio to the bloody knife in her hand. Look at his teeth, Madame. He's a strange little boy, no doubt, but Is he an animal? Do you want to put a saddle on him? Madame bent down and took Tonio's jaw almost tenderly in her gloved hand. Tonio was too far gone to resist her, still looking into his mouth. As the silence dragged on, she called out, Chandra, come here! In the stables, a metal pail hit the ground. The stable door groaned as it swung open. The darkness beyond yawned absolute. Marina's fingers grew sweaty and tired on the bowstring when she lowered it. Blood stung my eyes, soaking my hand when I wiped it away. I needed to lie down. I had to get Tonio out of there. I wanted to show her, but I never meant for things to get so far out of hand. Madame seemed all of a sudden to decide. She rose and turned on Tonio with the knife out. He didn't see it coming. I dove after her, screaming. I grabbed her arm, but she slipped out of my blood-slit grip to stab him. The knife scythed through Tonio's down parka and came out amid a flurry of feathers. I spoiled her attack, but she cocked her arm to stab him in the throat. I stepped inside her reach and shoved her as hard as I could. Tonio rolled away shrieking and threw his pad at her. Marina shouted, Madame! and raised her bow, loosed her arrow. It never hit me. Sewing past my eyes, it hit Acteon in the shoulder, but didn't slow him down. He came so fast I could only fall before him. Leaping over me, he dealt Marina a brutal kick to the chest. The girl slammed into the barn door and slumped to the ground. Almost in the same movement, he lunged after Madame, who, in turn, dove after Tonio. His jaws snapped at her, and she hung, howling in midair, caught by his teeth and her long white hair. Tonio crab-walked backwards into a corner between two walls of hay bales. Hanging by her hair, Madame roared commands in Greek, but Actaeon stood frozen, unable to parse the sticky situation with the stunted brute mind his mistress had given him. Sounds of shuffling feet behind me made me turn, and I gasped. The rest of them had broken loose and skulked out of the dark like madhouse inmates on Judgment Day. Knees skinned and spurs bloodied from kicking down their stable doors. Their big black eyes rolled and they began to hoot deep in their barrel chests. Nostrils flared as they scented blood in the air. Tonio's blood. A trickle stood out on his green parka, studded with white down feathers, radioactive in its effect. I knew then why Madame Diosquios had always had someone else treat and put down her beasts. The smell of their own blood, the sounds of their pain, drove them mad. I thought then that I would die, and I lay still as death on the ground, but I did not exist for them. They stampeded over me and converged on Madame Diosquios. I got up pointedly, not looking at them as I crawled along the wall to Tonio. He pressed his face against the wall and chewed his lips, too scared to make a sound as I bundled him up in my arms and shuffled with my eyes closed for 1,000 years to the barn door. I raced home and packed bags in a panic. Tonio had fallen asleep in the truck. I was ready to flee again when exhaustion set in. I had enough strength to bring Tonio into the house and lay him in his bed before I passed out myself. I awakened at dawn and no sirens wailed, no police broke down the door. We would leave, but not in a hurry, not as fugitives. I couldn't understand how the world couldn't sense something so wrong happening, but then, how could it not have sensed how wrong things had been all along? The sisterhood would smother it in secrecy, and that would be best. No one needed to know. I only went back once. That morning, of the beast there was no sign, nor of any of the girls. Trista was gone, and there were open pill packets and gauze bandage wrappers on the floor of the tack room. I still worry about them, but I think they will make out all right. After her fashion, Madame Diosquios prepared them well to face the world. I won't detail what they did to her body or where I found the head, the bloody paintings they made on the walls of the barn and their stables, in the chapel of the goddess at the barn's heart, or what I will always remember, though they had only one color to work in, the delicacy of the shapes of centaurs, satyrs, and nymphs sporting across, filling and spilling off the cedar beam walls, spoke as no words could of what they might have been in another life. I burned the place down. I buried what I could find of Madame Diosquios under the laurel tree behind the hunting lodge. I said a prayer for her after I counted her teeth. Her extra bicuspids were filed down and the jaw surgically rebuilt, but she still had too many molars to pass for human in her own book. I hope God sees it differently. Cargo by E. Michael Lewis. November 1978. Hey, that was when I was born. I dreamt of cargo. Thousands of crates filled the airplane's hold, all made of unfurnished pine, the kind that drives slivers through work clothes. They were stamped with knowable numbers and bizarre acronyms that glowed fiercely with dim red light. There were supposed to be Jeep tires, but some were as large as a house, others as small as a spark plug, all of them secured to pallets with binding like straitjacket straps. I tried to check them all, but there were too many. There was a low shuffling as the boxes shifted, then the cargo fell on me. I couldn't reach the interphone to warn the pilot. The cargo pressed down on me with 1,000 sharp little fingers as the plane rolled, crushing the life out of me even as we dived, even as we crashed, the interphone ringing now like a scream. But there was another sound too, from inside the crate left to my ear. Something struggled inside the box. Something sodden and defiled. Something that I didn't want to see. Something that wanted out. It changed into the sound of a clipboard being wrapped on the metal frame of my crew house bunk. My eyes shot open. The airman, new in country by the sweat lining his collar, stood over me, holding the clipboard between us, trying to decide if I was the type to rip his head off just for doing his job. "Tech Sergeant Davis," he said. "They need you on the flight line right away." I sat up and stretched. He handed me the clipboard and an attached manifest. I knocked down Q53 with flight crew, mechanics, and medical support personnel bound for somewhere new. Timeri Airport. It's outside Georgetown, Guyana. When I looked blank, he went on. It's a former British colony. Timeri used to be Atkinson Air Force Base. What's the mission? It's some kind of mass medevac of expats from somewhere called Jonestown. Americans in trouble. I'd spent a good part of my Air Force career flying Americans out of trouble. That being said, flying Americans out of trouble was a hell of a lot more satisfying than hauling Jeep tires. I thanked him and hurried into a clean flight suit. I was looking forward to another Panamanian Thanksgiving at Howard Air Force Base. 85 degrees, turkey and stuffing from the mess hall, football on the Armed Forces radio, and enough time out of the flight rotation to get good and drunk. The inbound hop from the Philippines went by the numbers, and both the passengers and cargo were free and easy. Now this. Interruption was something you grew accustomed to as a loadmaster. The C-141 Starlifter was the largest freighter and troop carrier in the Military Air Command, capable of carrying 70,000 pounds of cargo or 200 battle-ready troops and flying them anywhere in the world. Half as long as a football field, the high-set, swept-back wings drooped bat-like over the tarmac. With an unswept T-tail, pedaled doors, and a built-in cargo ramp, the Starlifter was unmatched when it came to moving cargo. Part stewardess and part moving man, my job as a loadmaster was to pack it as tight and as safe as possible. With everything on board and my weight and balance sheets complete, the same airman found me cussing up the Panamanian ground crew for leaving a scuff mark on the airframe. "Sergeant Davis, change in plans," he yelled over the whine of the forklift. He handed me another manifest. "More passengers?" "New passengers. Med crew is staying here," he said, something unintelligible about a change of mission. "Who are these people?" Again, I strained to hear him, or maybe I heard him fine, and with the sinking in my gut, I wanted him to repeat it. I wanted him to hear. I wanted to hear him wrong. "Graves registration," he cried. That's what I thought he'd said. Timeri was your typical third world airport, large enough to squeeze down a 747, but strewn with potholes and sprawling with rusted one-set huts. The low line of jungle surrounding the field looked as if it had been beaten back only an hour before. Helicopters buzzed up and down the U.S. servicemen swarmed the tarmac. I knew then that things must be bad. Outside the bird, the heat rising from the asphalt threatened to melt the soles of my boots even before I had the wheel chocks in place. A ground crew of American GIs approached, anxious to unload and assemble the chopper. One of them, bare-chested with his shirt tied around his waist, handed me a manifest. "Don't get comfy," he said. "As soon as the chopper's clear, we're loading you up." He nodded over his shoulder. I looked out over the shimmering taxiway. Coffins, rows and rows of dull aluminum funerary boxes gleamed in the unforgiving tropical sun. I recognized them from my flights out of Saigon 6 years ago. My first as loadmaster. Maybe my insides did a little little flip because I'd had no rest, or maybe because I hadn't carried a stiff in a few years. Still, I swallowed hard. I looked at the destination, Dover, Delaware. The ground crew loaded a fresh comfort pallet when I learned we'd have 2 passengers on the outbound flight. The first was a kid right out of high school by the look of it, with bristle black hair, and 2 large jungle fatigues that were starched clean and showed the rank of Airman First Class. I told him, "Welcome aboard," and went to help him through the crew door, but he jerked away, nearly hitting his head against the low entrance. I think he would have leapt back if there had been room. His scent hit me, strong and medicinal, Vicks Vapor Rub. Behind him, a flight nurse, crisp and professional in step dress and gesture, also boarded without assistance. I regarded her evenly. I recognized her as one of a batch. I had flown regularly from Clark in the Philippines to Da Nang and back again in my early days. A still-eyed, silver-haired lieutenant, she had been very specific more than once in pointing out how any numbskull high school dropout could do my job better. The name on her uniform read, Pembry. She touched the kid on his back and guided him to the seats, but if she recognized me, she said nothing. "Take a seat anywhere," I told them. "I'm Tech Sergeant Davis. We'll be wheels up in less than an hour, so make yourself comfortable." The kid stopped short. "You didn't tell me," he said to the nurse. The hold of a starlifter is most like the inside of a boiler room, with all the heat, coiling, and pressure ducts exposed rather than hidden away like an airliner. The coffins formed 2 rows down the length of the hold, leaving a center aisle clear. Stacked 4 high, there were 160 of them. Yellow cargo nets held them in place. Looking past them, we watched the sunlight disappear as the cargo hatch closed, leaving us in an awkward semi-darkness. "It's the fastest way to get you home," she said to him, her voice neutral. "You want to go home, don't you?" His voice dripped with fearful outrage. "I don't want to see them. I want a forward-facing seat." If the kid would have looked around, he could have seen that there were no forward-facing seats. "It's okay," she said, tugging on his arm. "They're going home too." "I don't want to look at them," he said as he pushed him to a seat nearest one of the small windows. When he didn't move to strap himself in, Pembry bent and did it for him. He gripped the handrails like the "oh shit" bar on a roller coaster. "I don't want to think about them." "I got it." I went forward and shut down the cabin lights. Now only the twin red jumpsuits and jump lights illuminated the long metal containers. When I returned, I brought him a pillow. The ID label on the kid's loose jacket said Hernandez. He said, "Thank you," but did not let go of the armrests. Pembry strapped herself in next to him. I stowed their gear and went through my final checklist. Once in the air, I brewed coffee on the electric stove in the comfort pallet. Nurse Pembry declined, but Hernandez took some. The plastic cup shook in his hands. "Afraid of flying?" I asked. It wasn't so unusual for the Air Force. "I have some Dramamine. I'm not afraid of flying," he said through clenched teeth. All the while he looked past me to the boxes lining the hold. Next, the crew. No one bird was assigned the same crew like in the old days. The MAC took great pride in having men be so interchangeable that a flight crew who had never met before could assemble at a flight line and fly any starlifter to the ends of the earth. Each man knew my job like I knew theirs inside and out. I went to the cockpit and found everyone on stations. The second engineer sat closest to the cockpit door, hunched over instrumentation. "4 is evening out now. Keep the throttle low," he said. I recognized his hangdog face and his Arkansas drawl, but I could not tell from where. I figured after 7 years of flying starlifters, I had flown with just about everyone at one time or another. He thanked me as I set the black coffee on his table. His flight suit named him Hadley. The first engineer sat in the bitch seat, the one usually reserved for a black hatter. Mission inspectors were the bane of all Mac aircrews. He asked for 2 lumps and then stood and looked out the navigator's dome at the blue Russian past. "Throttle low on 4, got it," replied the pilot. He was the designated aircraft commander, but both he and the co-pilot were such typical flight jocks that they could have been the same person. They took their coffee with 2 creams each. "We're trying to outfly some clear air turbulence, but it won't be easy. Tell your passengers to expect some weather." "Will do, sir. Anything else?" "Thank you, Loeb Davis, that's all." "Yes, sir." Finally, time to relax. As I went to have a horizontal moment in the crew berth, I saw Pembry snooping around the comfort pallet. "Anything I could help you find? An extra blanket?" I pulled one from the storage cabinet between the cooking station and the latrine and gritted my teeth. "Anything else?" "No," she said, pulling a piece of imaginary lint from the wool. "We've flown together before, you know." "Have we?" She raised an eyebrow. "I probably ought to apologize." "No need, ma'am," I said. I dodged around her and opened the fridge. "I could serve an in-flight meal later if you are..." She placed her hand on my shoulder, like she had on Hernandez, and commanded my attention. "You do remember me?" "Yes, ma'am. I was pretty hard on you during those evac flights. I wish you'd stop being so direct." "You were speaking your mind, ma'am. It made me a better loadmaster." "Still, ma'am, there's no need. Why can't women figure out that apologies only make things worse?" "Very well." The hardness of her face melted into sincerity, and suddenly it occurred to me that she wanted to talk. "How's your patient?" "Resting." Pembry tried to act casual, but I knew she wanted to say more. "What's the problem?" "He was one of the first to arrive," she said, "and the first to leave." "Jonestown? Was it that bad?" Flashback to our earlier evac flights, the old look, hard and cool, returned instantly. We flew out over Dover on White House orders 5 hours after they got the call. He's a medical records specialist, 6 months in the service. He's never been anywhere before, never saw a day of trauma in his life. Next thing he knows, he's in South American jungle with 1,000 dead bodies. 1,000? Count's not yet in. It's headed that way. She brushed the back of her hand against her cheek. So many kids. Kids? Whole families. They all drank poison. Some kind of cult, they said. Someone told me the parents killed their children first. I don't know what could make a person do that to their own family. She shook her head. I stayed at Tamari to organize triage. Hernandez said the smell was unimaginable. They had to spray the bodies with insecticide and defend them from hungry giant rats. He said they made him bayonet the bodies to release the pressure. He burned his uniform. She shuffled to keep her balance as the bird jolted. Something nasty crept down the back of my throat as I tried not to visualize what she said. I struggled not to grimace. The AC says it may get rough. You better strap in. I walked her back to her seat. Hernandez's mouth gaped as he sprawled across his seat, looking for all the world like he'd lost a bar fight. Bad. Then I went to my bunk and fell asleep. Ask any loadmaster. After so much time in the air, the roar of engines is something you ignore. You find you can sleep through just about anything. Still, your mind tunes in and wakes up at the sound of anything unusual, like the flight from Yakota to Elmendorf, when a Jeep came loose and rolled into a crate of MREs. Chipped beef everywhere. You can bet the ground crew heard from me on that one, so it should not come as a shock that I started at the sound of a scream. On my feet, out of the bunk, past the comfort pallet before I could think. Then I saw Pembry. She was out of her seat and in front of Hernandez, dodging his flailing arms, speaking calmly and below the engine noise. Not him, though. I heard them! They're in there! All those kids! I put my hand on him, hard. Calm down. He stopped flailing. A shamed expression came over him, his eyes riveted mine. I heard them singing. Who? The children, all the... He gave a helpless gesture to the unlighted coffins. You had a dream, Pembry said. Her voice shook a little. I was with you the whole time. You were asleep. You couldn't have heard anything. All the children are dead, he said. All of them. They didn't know. How could they have known they were drinking poison? Who would give their own child poison to drink? I let go of his arm and he looked at me. Do you have kids? No, I said. My daughter, he said, is a year and a half old. My son is 3 months. You have to be careful with them, patient with them. My wife is really good at it, you know? I noticed for the first time how sweat crawled across his forehead, the backs of his hands. But I'm okay too. I mean, I don't really know what the fuck I'm doing, but I wouldn't hurt them. I hold them and I sing to them, and if anyone else tried to hurt them... He grabbed me on the arm that had held him. Who would give their children poison? It isn't your fault, I told him. They didn't know it was poison. They still don't. He pulled me closer and said into my ear, I heard them singing. I'll be damned if the words he spoke didn't make my spine shiver. I'll go check it out, I told him as I grabbed a flashlight off the wall and started down the center aisle. There was a practical reason for checking out the noise. As a loadmaster, I knew that an unusual sound meant trouble. I had heard a story about how an aircrew kept hearing the sound of a cat meowing from somewhere in the hold. The loadmaster couldn't find it, but figured it'd turn up when they offloaded the cargo. Turns out the meowing was a weakened load brace that buckled when the wheels touched runway, freeing 3 tons of explosive ordnance and making the landing very interesting. Strange noises meant trouble, and I'd have been fooled not to look into it. I checked all the buckles and netting as I went, stooping and listening, checking for signs of shifting, fraying straps, anything out of the ordinary. I went up one side and down the other, even checking the cargo doors. Nothing. Everything was sound. My usual best work. I walked up the aisle to face them. Hernandez wept, head in his hands. Pembry rubbed his back with one hand as she sat next to him, like my mother had done to me. All clear, Hernandez. Put the flashlight back on the wall. Thanks, Pembry replied for him, then said to me, I gave him a Valium. He should quiet down now. Just a safety check, I told her. Now both of you get some rest. I went back to my bunk to find it occupied by Hadley, the second engineer. I took the one below him, but couldn't fall asleep right away. I tried to keep my mind far away from the reason the coffins were in my bird in the first place. Cargo was the euphemism. From blood plasma to high explosives to Secret Service limousines to gold bullion. You packed it and hauled it because it was your job. That was all and anything that could be done to speed you on your way. Just important. Just cargo, I thought, but whole families that killed themselves? I was glad to get them the hell out of the jungle, back home to their families, but the medics who got there first, all those guys on the ground, even my crew, we were too late to do any more than that. I was interested in having kids in a vague, unsettled sort of way, and it pissed me off to hear about anyone harming them. But my parents did it willingly, didn't they? I couldn't relax. I found an old copy of the New York Times folded into the bunk. Peace in the Middle East in our lifetimes, it read. Next to the article was a picture of President Carter and Anwar Sadat shaking hands. I was just about to drift off when I thought I heard Hernandez cry out again. I dragged my ass up. Hembry stood with her hands clutched over her mouth. I thought Hernandez had hit her, so I went to her and peeled her hands away looking for damage. There was none. Looking over her shoulder, I could see Hernandez, riveted to his seat, eyes glued to the darkness, like a reverse-color television. What happened? Did he hit you? He heard it again, she stammered as one hand rose to her face again. You ought to go check again. You ought to go check. The pitch of the plane shifted and she fell into me a little, and as I steadied myself by grabbing her elbow, she collapsed against me. I met her gaze matter-of-factly. She looked away. What happened? I asked her again. I heard it too, Hembry said. My eyes went to the Isle of Shadow. Just now? Yes. Was it, like he said, children singing? I realized I was on the verge of shaking her. Were they both going crazy? Children playing, she said, like playground noise, kids playing. I racked my brain for some object or some collection of objects that, when stuffed into a C-141 Starlifter and flown 39,000 feet over the Caribbean, would make a sound like children playing. Hernandez shifted his position and we both brought our attention to bear on him. He smiled a defeated smile and said to us, I told you. I'll go check it out, I told them. Let them play, said Hernandez. They just want to play. Isn't that what you wanted to do as a kid? I remembered my childhood like a jolt, endless summers and bike rides and skinned knees and coming home at dusk to my mother saying, Look how dirty you are. I wondered if the recovery crews washed the bodies before they put them in the coffins. I'll find out what it is, I told them. I went and got the flashlight again. Stay put. I used the darkness to close off my sight, give me more to hear. The turbulence had subsided by then, and I used my flashlight only to avoid tripping on the cargo netting. I listened for anything new or unusual. There wasn't one thing, it had to be a combination. Noises like that just don't stop and start again. Fuel leak? Stowaway? The thought of a snake or some other jungle beast lurking inside those metal boxes heightened my whole state of being and brought back my dream. Near the cargo doors, I shut off my light and listened. Pressurized air, 4 Pratt and Whitney turbofan engines, fracture rattles, cargo straps flapping, and then something. Something came in sharp after a moment, at first dull and sweeping, like noise from the back of a cave, but then pure and unbidden, like sounds to a surprised eavesdropper. Children. Laughter. Like recess at grade school. I opened my eyes and flashed my light around the silver crates. I found them waiting, huddled with me, almost expectant. Children, I thought. Just children. I ran past Hernandez and Primbury to the comfort pallet. I can tell you what they saw in my face, but if it was anything like what I saw in the mirror above the latrine sink, I would have been at once terrified and redeemed. I looked from the mirror to the interphone. Any problem with the cargo should be reported immediately. Procedure demanded it, but what could I tell the AC? I had an urge to drop it all, just eject the coffins and call it a day. If I told him there was a fire in the hold, we would drop below 10,000 feet so I could blow the bolts and send the whole load to the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico. No problems asked. I stopped, straightened up, tried to think. Children, I thought. Not monsters, not demons. Just the sound of children playing. Nothing that will get you. Nothing that can get you. I tossed off the shiver that ran through my body and decided to get some help. At the bunk, I found Hadley still asleep. A dog-eared copy of a paperback showing 2 women locked in a passionate embrace lay like a tent on his chest. I shook his arm and he sat up. Neither of us said anything for a moment. He rubbed his face with one hand and yawned. Then he looked right at me, and I watched his face arc into worry. His next action was to grab his portable oxygen. He recovered his game face in an instant. What is it, Davis? I groped for something. The cargo, I said. There's a possible shift in the cargo. I need a hand, sir. His worry snapped into annoyance. Have you told the AC? No, sir, I said. I don't want to trouble him yet. It may be nothing. His face screwed into something unpleasant, and I thought I'd have words from him, but he let me lead the way aft. Just his presence was enough to revive my doubt, my professionalism. My walk sharpened, my eyes widened, my stomach returned to its place in my gut. I found Pembry sitting next to Hernandez now, both together in a feigned indifference. Hadley gave them a disinterested look and followed me down the aisle between the coffins. What about the main lights? He asked. They don't help, I said. Here. I handed him the flashlight and asked him, Do you hear it? Hear what? Just listen. Again, only engines and the jet stream. I don't. Shh. Listen. His mouth opened and stayed for a minute, then shut. The engines quieted and the sounds came dripping over us like water vapor, a fog of sound around us. I didn't realize how cold I was until I noticed my hands shaking. What in the hell is that? Hadley asked. It sounds like... Don't, I interrupted. That can't be it. I nodded at the mailboxes. You know what's in the coffins, don't you? He didn't say anything. The sound seemed to filter around us for a moment, at once close, then far away. He tried to follow the sound with his light. Can you tell where it's coming from? No, I'm just glad you hear it too, sir. The engineer scratched his head, his face drawn like he swallowed something foul and couldn't lose the aftertaste. I'll be damned, he drawled. All at once, as before, the sound stopped, and the roar of the jets filled our ears. I'll hit the lights. I moved away hesitantly. I'm not going to call the AC. His silence was conspiratorial. As I rejoined him, I found him examining a particular row of coffins through the netting. You need to conduct a search, he said dully. I didn't respond. I'd done mid-air cargo searches before, but never like this, not even on bodies of servicemen. If anything Pembry said was true, I couldn't think of anything worse than opening one of these caskets. We both started at the next sound. Imagine a wet tennis ball. Now imagine the sound a wet tennis ball makes when it hits the court. A sort of dull thwack, like a bird striking the fuselage. It sounded again, and this time I could hear it inside the hole. Then, after a buffet of turbulence, the thump sounded again. It came clearly from a coffin at Hadley's feet. Not a serious problem, his face tried to say. We just imagined it. A noise from one coffin can't bring the plane down, his face said. There are no such things as ghosts. Sir? We need to see, he said. Blood pulled in my stomach again. See, he had said. I didn't want to see. Get on the horn and tell the AC to avoid the chop, he said. I knew at that moment he was going to help me. He didn't want to, but he was going to do it anyway. What are you doing? Pembry asked. She stood by as I removed the cargo netting from the row of caskets while the engineer undid the individual straps around that one certain row. Hernandez slept, head bowed, the downers having finally taken effect. We have to examine the cargo, I stated matter-of-factly. The flight may have caused the load to become unbalanced. She grabbed my arm as I went by. Was that all it was? A shifting load? There was a touch of desperation in her question. Tell me I imagined it, the look on her face said. Tell me, and I will believe you, and I'll go get some sleep. We think so, I nodded. Her shoulders dropped, and her face peeled into a smile, too broad to be real. Thank God, I thought I was going crazy. I patted her shoulder. Strap in and get some rest, I told her, and she did. Finally, I was doing something. As load master, I could put an end to this nonsense, so I did the work. I unstrapped the straps, climbed the other caskets, shoved the top one out of place, carried it, secured it, removed the next one, carried it, secured it, and again. The joy of easy repetition. It wasn't until we got to the bottom one, the noisy one, that Hadley stopped. He stood there watching me as I pulled it out of place enough to examine it. His stance was level, but even so it spoke of revulsion, something that among swaggering Air Force veterans and over beers he could conceal. Not now, not to me. I did a cursory examination of the deck where it had sat, of the caskets next to it, and saw no damage or obvious flaws. A noise sounded, a moist thunk from inside. We flinched in unison. The engineer's cool loathing was impossible to conceal. I suppressed a tremble. "We have to open it," I said. The engineer didn't disagree, but like me, his body was slow to move. He squatted down and with one hand firmly planted on the casket lid, unlashed the clasp on his end. I undid mine, finding my fingers slip on the cold metal and shaking a little as I pulled them away and braced my hand on the lid. Our eyes met in one moment that held the last of our resolve. Together, we opened the casket. First, the smell. A mash of rotten fruit, antiseptic, and formaldehyde wrapped in plastic with dung and sulfur. It stung our nostrils as it filled the hold. The overhead lights illuminated two shiny black body bags, slick with condensation and waste. I knew these would be the bodies of children, but it awed me, hurt me. One bag lay unevenly concealed, the other, and I understood at once that there was more than one child in it. My eyes skimmed the juice-soaked plastic, picking out the contour of an arm, the trace of a profile. A shape coiled near the bottom seam, away from the rest. It was the size of a baby. Then the plane shivered like a frightened pony, and the top bag slid away to reveal a young girl, 8 or 9 at the most, half in and half out of the bag. Wedged like a mad contortionist into the corner, her swollen belly, showing stab wounds from bayonets, had bloated again, and her twisted limbs were now as thick as tree limbs. Pigment-bearing skin had peeled away everywhere but her face, which was as pure and innocent as any cherub in heaven. Her face was what really drove it home, what really hurt me, her sweet face. My hand fixed itself to the casket edge in painful whiteness, but I dared not remove it. Something caught in my throat, and I forced it back down. A lone fly, fat and glistening, crawled from inside the bag and flew lazily towards Hadley. He slowly rose to his feet and braced himself as if against a body blow. He watched it rise and flit a clumsy path through the air. Then he broke the moment by stepping back, his hands filling and hitting it. I heard the slap of his hand and letting a nauseous sound escape his lips. When I stood up, my temples throbbed and my knees weakened. I held on to a nearby casket, my throat filled with something rancid. "Close it," he said, like a man with his mouth full. "Close it." My arms went rubbery. After bracing myself, I lifted one leg and kicked the lid. It rang out like an artillery shot. Pressure pounded into my ears like during a rapid descent. Hadley put his hands on his haunches and lowered his head, taking deep breaths through his mouth. "Jesus," he croaked. I saw movement. Hembry stood next to the line of coffins, her face pulled up in sour disgust. "What is that smell?" "It's okay." I found I could work one arm and tried what I hoped looked like an offhanded gesture. Found the problem, had to open it up though. "Go sit down." Hembry brought her hands up around herself and went back to her seat. I found that with a few more deep breaths, the smell dissipated enough to act. "We have to secure it," I told Hadley. He looked up from the floor and I saw his eyes as narrow slits. His hands were in fists and his broad torso stood fierce and straight. With the corner of his eyes wet and splinted, he said nothing. It became cargo again as I fastened the latches. He strained to fit it back into place. In a matter of minutes, the other caskets were stowed, the exterior straps were in place, the cargo netting draped and secure. Hadley waited for me to finish up, then walked forwards with me. "I'm going to tell the AC you solved the problem," he said, "and to get us back to speed." I nodded. "One more thing," he said. "If you see that fly, kill it." "Didn't you?" "No." I didn't know what else to say, so I said, "Yes, sir." Pembry sat in her seat, nose wriggled up, feigning sleep. Hernandez sat upright, eyelids half open. He gestured for me to come closer and bend down. "Did you let them out to play?" he asked. I stood over him and said nothing. In my heart, I felt that same pang I did as a child when summer was over. When we landed in Dover, a funeral detail in full dress offloaded every coffin, affording full funeral rites to each person. I'm told as more bodies flew in, the formality was scrapped, and only a solitary Air Force chaplain met the planes. By week's end, I was back in Panama with a stomach full of turkey and cheap rum. Then it was off to the Marshall Islands, delivering supplies to the guided missile base there. In the military air command, there is no shortage of cargo. E. Michael Lewis says, of the 900 people who died in the Jonestown massacre, nearly a third of them were under the age of 18. This story is dedicated to the families who lost loved ones at Jonestown and to the servicemen and women who brought them home. Tender as teeth, Stephanie Crawford and Dwayne Swierczynski. Is it true that the cure made all of you vegetarians? Carson asked. Justine was staring at the road ahead, but could see him toying with his digital recorder in her peripheral vision. He was asking a flurry of questions, but at the same time avoiding the big question. She wished he'd just come out with it already. "Why are you asking me?" she replied. "I'm not the mouthpiece for every single survivor." Carson stammered a little before Justine glanced over and gave him a wide grin. "Oh yes, I referred to former zombies as survivors. Make sure to include that. Your readers will love it." As they drove across the desert, the sun was pulling the sky from black to a gritty blue-gray. The rented compact car held a 33-year-old man named Carson with enough expensive camera equipment to crowd up the back seat, and Justine, a woman 2 years younger who kept her own small shoulder bag between her feet. The rest of her baggage was invisible. Some said as far as apocalyptic plagues went, it could have been a lot worse. The dead didn't crawl out of their graves. Society didn't crumble entirely. The infection didn't spread as easily as it did in the movies. You had to either really try to get infected or be genetically predisposed to it. Justine happened to be one of the latter. After work one night, Justine was nursing a Pabst at her local generic suburban sports bar, while half listening to the news about a virus that would probably quiet down like H1N1, and texting her late friend Gina. She was just raising the bottle's mouth to her lips when a thick, dead weight fell against her and knocked her out of her bar stool and onto the sticky, peanut shell-covered floor. Too fucking enraged to wait for a good Samaritan to jump up and give her a "Hey, pal," Justine started blindly kicking out her heels and thrusting out fists at the drunk bastard. That's how it played out until the drunk started gnawing at her fists until his incisors connected with the actual bone of her finger, while his mouth worked to slurp up the swollen and shredded meat of her knuckles. After that, Justine remembered little until the cure hit her bloodstream. That had been 6 months after the attack in the bar, and in the meantime... Carson tried to look at Justine without full-on staring at her. Like much of the time he'd spent with her so far, he was fairly certain he was failing miserably. The miracle vaccine seemed to have left Justine with little more damage than a scarred face, a lean, muscled body that bordered on emaciation, and an entire planet filled with people who actively wanted her dead. That was called being one of the lucky ones. Keep her talking, he reminded himself. Carson asked, I understand your mom paid for the cure? Justine kicked the glove compartment while crossing her legs. Sadly, yes, I guess she meant well. Aren't you glad to be alive? If you call this living. Better than being dead. She turned to face him, squinting and twisting her lips into a pout. Is it? Asking questions was the problem, Carson decided. He wasn't a real journalist. He'd only brought the digital recorder to please his editor, who couldn't afford to send both a photographer and a reporter. Just keep her talking as much as possible, the editor had said. We'll make sense of it later. But most important, his editor added, we want her to talk about what it's like. What is like? Carson had asked. His editor replied, what it's like to go on living. A year ago today, he'd been out in Las Vegas for one of the most insane reasons of all. A photo shoot for a celebrity cookbook. The celebrity in question was the borderline morbidly obese actor known for both his comedic roles as well as his darker turns in mob flicks. Right before he left on that trip, the first outbreaks had been reported, but the virus seemed to be contained to certain parts of the country, and Carson thought he'd come to regret it if he turned down the assignment over the latest health scare, especially if that would leave him stuck in his Brooklyn apartment for months on end while this thing ran its course. They were saying it could be as bad as the 1918 flu pandemic. Oh, if he had only known. The outbreak had happened mid-shoot. A pack of zombies had burst in just as the food stylist had finished with the chicken scarpariello. They weren't interested in the dish. They wanted the celebrity chef instead. Carson kept snapping photos before he quit and quite realized what was happening. He escaped across Vegas, continuing to take pictures as the city tore itself apart. And then he saw Justine, though he didn't know her name then. Back then, she was just... Carson heard his editor's impatient reminder in his head. Keep her talking. Yeah, not talking was the reason he'd become a photographer. He preferred to keep the lens between himself and the rest of the world, speaking to subjects only when he absolutely had to. He was struggling to formulate a new question when she spoke up. Do you remember the exact place? Carson nodded. So where was it? Justine asked. That surprised him. He assumed she would have just known. Maybe not when she was in that state, because the former zombies, the survivors, were supposed to have blanked memories. The photo, though. Surely she had to have seen the photo at some point. Or did she? Outside of Vegas, almost near Henderson. Huh, Justine said. Makes sense. Does it? That's not far from where I used to live. So come on. Where did you, encounter me? Carson pulled on to the 5, which would take them out of the valley and out through the desert. I'm hoping I'll be able to find it again once we're out there, he said. Don't count on it, buddy boy, she said. My mom tells me they've razed a lot of the old neighborhood. There's even been talk of abandoning Vegas altogether, clear everyone out, then drop an H-bomb directly on it. Wipe the slate clean. Carson, still fumbling, heard the question tumble out of his mouth before he could stop himself. Have you, seen the photo? Justine had woken up in the hospital, still swelling for a fight. After about a minute, her eyes registered that she was in a hospital bed, and she felt her mom squeezing her hand through layers of aching pain and a wooziness that could only be coming from the IV attached to her arm. So she'd assumed. So the bastard actually put her in the hospital. Justine's first lucid words were spent reassuring her mom, who herself looked like she'd been put through the ringer. "Hey, Ma, it's all right. You should see the other guy." That's what she attempted to say, at any rate. It came out sounding more like, "I Shoulders, other guy." Her voice sounded cracked and enfeebled, almost as if her actual esophagus was bruised and coated in grime. Mother teared up and went in for the most delicate hug Justine could remember ever having experienced. "Thank God you finally showed up. Thank God you're back, and thank Him that you don't remember." It was only then that Justine noticed that the doctors and nurses surrounding her had what could only be taken as unprofessional looks of pure, barely disguised looks of disgust on their faces. All this for a fucking bar fight she didn't even start? Before Justine could ask what exactly was going on, her mom cupped her palm against her daughter's cheek. Justine couldn't help realizing how hollowed out it felt against her mom's warm hand. "Sweetie, I have a lot I need to tell you. It's not when you think it is, and you're not exactly who you think you are anymore. The world got infected and wormed you worse than anyone. You're going to need to prepare yourself. Just know I love you always." And then her mom told her what the world had been up to. Well, boys and girls, it looks like it's the end of our time together this evening. I'm so glad we could hang out. Sorry I missed last night. I was hanging out with family. I figured I could just make it all up today, but thank you so much once again for hanging out with me tonight. It was a pleasure hanging out and hopefully entertaining you. Thank you to all of my friends out there, wherever you may be listening, Beyond The Omniverse tonight. Had a wonderful time, and I can't wait to do it again tomorrow night. Actually, next weekend. Unless I find, I don't know, I might start that other book tomorrow night. I don't know yet, but I'll let you know. Don't forget, we're all in this together. Together we can make the world better, and together we are Paradox Media, because without you, there is no us. Please, if you have the means, ability, or initiative, if you believe in what I'm doing here, or just enjoy hanging out with me on the airwaves, and can sling or fling something my way, it would really help me keep this mothership afloat and would be greatly appreciated. Places you can donate are P.O. Box 663, Bayford, Colorado 81122, Cash App at $TessaTNT, PayPal at TessaTNT, and Venmo at Tessa-Thomas-Peterson 9911 Light. Take care of my views, and I'll see you back here, same crazy time, same crazy place. Mwah.